Chapter 31-35. These voices continued to spread throughout the Six Direction Association, reaching every corner of the association. Do you know why we're always at a disadvantage against the Eternals? That's because the Eternals have 6 zones of calamity. 3 pillars and 6 seas. They're incredibly powerful. More importantly, all 6 zones of calamity are working together. They can attack at any time. What about us? Of course, we're no match for the Eternals if we're scattered across parallel universes. Are you serious? Are the Eternals that strong? I know. It's true. My third uncle's second son's neighbor's master participated in Lord Lu's crusade against the endless battlefield. He saw with his own eyes the countless experts of the Eternals. Aren't our 6-way guilds also working together? Unite my ass. Look at the attack on the heavenly sect this time. Can the other spacetime support them? We can't support them at all. Rumor has it that most of the reincarnations don't know about this. Don't talk nonsense. Didn't you see that a lot of people who spread rumors were arrested? That's just talking bad about the Above Heaven sect, saying that Master Lu is dead. Those people who wanted to destroy the primordial space and our Six Direction Society are helping the everlasting race. It's best that they die. What we're saying now is different. We hope that the Six Direction Society can truly unite and gather all of our strength. That's easy for you to say. After so many years, isn't the Six Direction cult still fine? Could it be that with the addition of Master Lu, the Six Direction sect is in danger instead? You're short-sighted. When the parallel universe you're in is destroyed and no one comes to save you, you'll know how hopeless it is. What's the point of saying all this? Even if we're willing to work together, it's useless if those big shots don't agree. Besides, how are we supposed to work together? It was not easy to connect parallel spacetime. Just by relying on the Stargate, wouldn't it be like the endless battlefield? They can be easily destroyed by the Eternals. We can move to the origin space. If we go, what about those ordinary people? Do you know how many ordinary people there are in each parallel universe? I can't even calculate it. Simply unrealistic. That's right. Forget it. What's the point of thinking so much? Let those big shots worry about it. During this period of time, the Six Direction Society had made enough noise. Previously, it was disadvantageous to the primordial space, but now it was advantageous. No one knew where these voices originated from and no one bothered to investigate. Regarding the content of these voices, many members of the Six Paths Guild fell into deep thought. Was it really feasible to connect the parallel spacetime of the Six Directions together? No one had ever thought of this before. The Six Direction Society seemed to be equal, but the reincarnation spacetime was the dominant force. No one dared to say what would happen if the other parallel universes were connected to the reincarnation spacetime. Moreover, the conflicts between the two universes were only suppressed by the eternal race. Once they were connected, it might not be a good thing. However, now that the Eternals' true strength had been exposed, the scattered 6-way guilds appeared to be very weak. If the Eternals attacked a single point, the other parallel universes would not be able to reinforce them in time, and they would be easily destroyed. If Lu Yin had not returned alive and his strength had not undergone a transformation, the Heaven Above Heaven sect would have been in danger. The Eternals had cut off all reinforcements from the Above Heaven sect. This was the same reason why the 6 factions were unable to provide immediate reinforcements. This seemed like a simple logic, but if it were the everlasting race of the past, this logic wouldn't have worked in the Six-Party Society. Back then, the everlasting race didn't give the Six-Party Society the sense of crisis of extinction. However, things were different now. The Hung clan had 6 regions of calamity. Moreover, as the word's divine commandment spread out, the Six Direction Society's sense of crisis intensified. Under these circumstances, many of the Six-Party Society's cultivators headed towards the Genesis space, hoping to stay there. No matter how one looked at it, the Genesis space was the strongest among the Six-Party Society, followed by the Reincarnation spacetime. On the other hand, the Void God spacetime and Wood spacetime had fewer cultivators. Even the Endless Battlefield had some cultivators heading towards the Genesis space. In the Above Heaven sect, Lu Yin headed towards the Kingdom of Eternity. Along the way he saw more and more cultivators. Even though the Genesis space and the Above Heaven sect had fought the most battles, and the Above Heaven sect had been attacked twice, it was still the safest place for these cultivators. The Genesis space had more cultivators, while the Six Direction Society's other parallel universes had fewer cultivators. This way, the sense of crisis would grow even stronger, and it would be possible for Lu Yin to achieve what he wanted. That's right, Lu Yin wanted to connect the Six Direction Society and integrate the entire Six Direction Society into the Genesis space. He wanted to create the Above Heavens sect that had reached the pinnacle of brilliance for the second time. This was the only way to resist the Eternals. No, to suppress them. He had already seen the Eternals' bottom line. The despair that they had once felt was gradually dispelled with the appearance of various extraterrestrial civilizations and the increase of his own strength. Lu Yin was now confident that he could eradicate the Eternals, and this was only the first step. It all depended on how the people in charge of the Six Direction Society would react. Lu Yin respected the Void Master, Wood God, and even the Lost Tribe's Grand Elder. However, there were some things that needed to be done, and he hoped that they would be able to see it clearly. In the Kingdom of Eternity, Lu Yin came to look for the Divine Lady. She had requested to see him several times, but he was either not around or did not have the time. However, he still had to give an explanation to the Divine Kingdom regarding the motionless Heavenly King Elephant. The Divine Lady was now equivalent to an ordinary person. The Divine Kingdom's original spacetime had been destroyed, and the three elephants had died. Now, the Divine Kingdom had become the weakest civilization, and they only had 2 half-progenitors at most. The peace that had once existed was also gone. Without the protection of a powerful force, that peace would be very fragile. Lu Yin's arrival alarmed the Divine Kingdom, and everyone there bowed. The Divine Lady slowly bowed. "Greetings, Master Lu." Lu Yin looked at her. "Are you used to this place?" The Divine Lady was calm. "There's nothing to be used to as long as I'm alive." Lu Yin nodded. "Many things in this world are coincidences. If I hadn't been schemed against by the Limitless Empire and thrown into the Divine Kingdom, the Divine Kingdom would have been destroyed by Di Qiong. However, Di Qiong attacked the Divine Kingdom because I joined forces with many experts to attack the Eternal Tribe, forcing them to seek help from the other regions." The Divine Lady interrupted. "Master Lu, there's no right or wrong in this matter. We can only say that we were not strong enough to stop Di Qiong. It has nothing to do with you." Lu Yin looked at the Divine Lady. The Divine Lady asked, "I just want to know what happened to the motionless Heavenly King Elephant." She looked nervous. If the motionless Heavenly King Elephant could return to the Divine Kingdom, she would have a way to borrow its power again. Even if she could not recover the combat strength of the 3 elephants, she would still have the ability to protect herself. In fact, her ability to borrow the power of the 4 elephants had nothing to do with whether she was recognized by spacetime or not. It was the inheritance of the Divine Kingdom. Otherwise, how could an ordinary person be recognized by spacetime? Lu Yin sighed. "I'm sorry, the motionless Heavenly King Elephant is dead." The Divine Lady's body shook. Even though Elder Chan had told her, it was still hard for her to accept the news from Lu Yin. Lu Yin said, "The motionless Heavenly King Elephant was taken as a mount by the Lu family's ancestor, Lu Yuan. A long time ago, during the era of the Above Heaven, which was also the Eternal Tribe's first war of the Divine Commandment, the motionless Heavenly King Elephant died along with the second mainland. It protected the Mavis family and the 5th mainland." The Divine Lady's face turned pale and her whole body trembled. It was over, it was completely over. The motionless Heavenly King Elephant was really dead. How could the Divine Kingdom survive without the power of the 4 elephants? Live under the control of the Genesis space forever? Even though they were all humans, civilizations were different. Their thinking, way of doing things and so on were too different. The Divine Lady only wanted to protect the Divine Kingdom and even leave the Genesis space so that she could no longer participate in these wars. But now everything was gone. The Divine Kingdom was not qualified to leave. "Is it really dead?" the Divine Lady murmured. Lu Yin looked at her. "It's really dead." The Divine Lady was sad. The loss of the 4 elephants had completely knocked her to the ground. Lu Yin stood not far from her and watched quietly. The death of the 4 elephants had nothing to do with him. The motionless Heavenly King Elephant was the mount of the great ancestor Lu Yuan. Lu Yin did not know much about it, but the Divine Kingdom's collapse had something to do with the Divine Lady's own thinking. The Divine Kingdom was targeted by Di Qiong, but they did not think of attacking and only focused on defense. They thought that they could stop the enemy. The first time Lu Yin and the others entered the Divine Kingdom, they were almost beaten out. At that time the Divine Lady was high and mighty. She had the power to kill and seize. She was so arrogant. They had lost because they were conservative and conservative. They had lost because of their old thinking. If they had been willing to cooperate with the Above Heaven sect and asked for help when Di Qiong attacked the Divine Kingdom, the outcome would not have been like this. Nothing that happened in the universe was accidental. The Divine Kingdom would not be able to surpass everything. Lu Yin and the others entered the zone of Yi and caused Di Qiong to destroy the Divine Kingdom. There was a connection, but it was not cause and effect. Di Qiong had been watching the Divine Kingdom and they could not escape. On the other hand, it could be said that Lu Yin and the others had caused Di Qiong to destroy the Divine Kingdom in advance. However, Lu Yin had also protected the people of the Divine Kingdom. There was nothing to be apologetic about. The universe was cruel and the Divine Lady herself knew that. They could only blame themselves for being weak. If the Above Heaven sect had been destroyed by the Eternals, Lu Yin could not blame the other civilizations for not helping him. He would only hate himself for not being able to tie those civilizations to the Above Heaven sect. When doing things, one had to take the initiative and not be passive. Not long after Lu Yin left. Before he left, he gave the Divine Lady the right to meet him in the Above Heaven sect. Otherwise, how could an ordinary person like her enter the Above Heaven sect? The Genesis space had accepted more than just the Divine Kingdom. From the Above Heaven sect's point of view, the Divine Kingdom's civilization was just an ordinary civilization. There were too many such civilizations in the universe and they did not have the right to meet Lu Yin. Lu Yin still treated the Divine Kingdom relatively well. Perhaps it was because of their past interactions, or perhaps it was because of the immovable Celestial King's face. At the same time, at the entrance of the first zone of Yi, Celestial Battlemaster was sitting cross-legged with his golden staff beside him. Far away, Muji could feel Celestial Battlemaster's aura. He was a little frightened as he did not want to fight with this monster. If he was not careful, he could easily be killed. However, the entrance to the zone of Yi was not far from Celestial Battlemaster. If they wanted to enter, they would have to go through this monster. What could they do? Chapter 31-36. Muji thought for a long time and finally decided to go all out. He spun the wheel of life and death. When the needle stopped, they would live and die together. Muji cursed inwardly as he suppressed his impulsiveness and continued waiting. After a long time, the needle turned again and the needle stopped. So unlucky? Again. He had a narrow escape. Muji's eyes flashed. He didn't care anymore and charged forward. He leaped up and rushed towards the entrance of the first domain of disaster. Celestial Victor's eyes suddenly snapped open. He swept his gaze into the distance and grabbed the golden staff. Get out here. The long staff swept across and golden light flashed across the world as if the world was boiling. Muji's scalp went numb. This monster. He clenched his teeth and endured the strike of the golden staff. He felt as if all the bones in his body had been shattered, and his body was about to be sent flying. Not good, he could not block this power. It was impossible for him to enter the first disaster zone. Originally, he had not been that close to the entrance of the first zone of calamity, but Lu Yin had contacted him and asked him to keep an eye out. If anyone tried to enter the first zone of calamity by any means possible, he was to immediately kill them. Celestial Zhou Xian was very attentive to Lu Yin's words, and he was just short of sitting at the entrance of first zone of calamity. When Muji rushed out, he immediately sensed it and attacked without mercy. Muji was sent flying. If he hadn't narrowly escaped death, this blow would have killed him. The difference between the true God Guard Captain and Heavenly Lord Victorious Battle was too great. Heavenly Lord Victorious Battle was someone who could single-handedly fight against 3 High Lords and 6 Vast Lords. He was definitely at the level of the 7 Heavenly Gods. Just as Heavenly Lord Battle Victor was about to give chase, the Heavenly Hound ran out of the first calamity zone and charged at him. Celestial Victor's eyes were cold. This damn dog was the only one he didn't want to face. He couldn't beat it and didn't know what it was made of. However, he retrieved a foul object from his cosmic ring. This thing that Lu Yin had given him was the nemesis of the dead dog. The moment the stinky object was taken out, an indescribable stench instantly spread through the entrance of the zone of calamity. The Heavenly Hound howled and ran back to the zone of calamity with its tail between its legs, vomiting as it ran. The appearance of the stench had directly crippled it, leaving it with a psychological shadow. At this moment, the ancestor of the past walked out of the E-zone. He helplessly glanced at the heavenly hound beside him that had charged into the E-zone. He then looked at the heavenly Lord of Victory. Even I am curious as to what this thing is. After the heavenly hound returned to the zone of disaster, Celestial Lord Victor hurriedly put away the stench. He couldn't bear it either. When the stench was put away, he waved his hand and grinned. I'm also curious, but that's not important. Why did you come out? Ancestor, she looked into the distance. If someone wants to come in, I will let him in. Heavenly Lord Victor tightened his grip on his golden staff. Then we can't do as you wish. That fellow won't be able to enter. Ancestor, she shook his head. Since he wants to come in, I already understand. There's no meaning in you stopping him, isn't there? The heavenly sovereign was stunned and he recalled Lu Yin's words. When Lu Yin had asked the heavenly sovereign for help in stopping those who wanted to enter the zone of E, Lu Yin had said that if the heavenly sovereign's actions were to be seen by the 3 chiefs, the 6 seas or the 7 sky gods, then it would be pointless. Thus, the heavenly sovereign had tried his best not to be seen by those people. This was also why the heavenly sovereign had attacked with his full strength. He had wanted to kill Mu Ji with a single strike, but unfortunately he had not succeeded. Mu Ji had actually been able to withstand his attack. He looked into the distance. Who was that guy? This woman had come out to take him away. Seems like you also know that it's meaningless. The ancestor of the past said indifferently. The heavenly sovereign sneered. I know, but it's impossible to bring him back so easily. The ancestor of the past was not surprised. I know. At the entrance of the zone of E, the heavenly sovereign gripped his golden staff tightly. Blood flowed down his staff as he stared at the entrance. That woman was very strong. Within the first zone of E, Mu Ji stood in front of the ancestor of the past and spoke with tears and blood. After hearing Mu Ji's words, the ancestor of the past said indifferently, So you're not a spy? Mu Ji wailed, I'm innocent. Ancestor of the past, it's not me. It's definitely not me. Then who is it? The ancestor of the past looked at him. Mu Ji did not mention that Yi Bo was Lu Yin. Instead he said, I don't know. If I was a spy, how could I have returned? If I attacked the first zone of E with those from the above heaven sect, how could I have returned? The heavenly sovereign almost killed me with one strike. Ancestor of the past, please help me. I really didn't betray the clan. I definitely didn't. Why did you attack Yi Bo? The ancestor of the past asked. Mu Ji wanted to say that Yi Bo was Lu Yin, but he thought for a long time on his way back to the zone of E and decided not to say it. I don't know. The ancestor of the past looked at Mu Ji. Mu Ji wailed, I really don't know. I don't know what I did at that moment. Yi Bo shouldn't know either. When I reacted, I had already entered the void crack. The ancestor of the past looked at Mu Ji. Mu Ji suddenly slapped his head. Right, ancestor of the past, I have something to tell you. Wu Ho is a spy. Far away in a tall tower, Hui Wu stood quietly and looked into the distance. He saw that Mu Ji had returned, which meant that his days were over. Father, I've done everything I can. I'll leave the rest to you. Soon, the ancestor of the past appeared below Hui Wu's tower. He looked up and saw Hui Wu looking down at the ancestor of the past. Corpse King or Berserk Corpse, choose one. This was the choice the ancestor of the past gave Hui Wu. Hui Wu was a spy. Hui Wu looked up at the ground of the zone of E. Whatever, it's the same anyway. The ancestor of the past praised, I admire your father's wisdom. He even sent his own son here. I've seen him before when he was still young. At that time he wasn't so heartless. Hui Wu laughed. The light-sifting sword sky has survived since the era of above heaven. Could it be that you still want to persuade me to betray the human race? If I wanted to betray, I would have done so long ago. The ancestor of the past said, I'm just curious why you aren't controlled by godly power. Hui Wu sneered, my Hui clan's golden meteor battle technique was nurtured by my father. If we work together with Lu Tianyi, we can achieve it. Unfortunately, after so many years, I was the only one who managed to sneak into the eternal race. Although my father did it, he miscalculated. He underestimated his own reputation. Because I'm the son of Hui ancestor, the eternal race never trusted me. They tested me many times, but even if I passed, I could only become a half-ancestor. If not for the lack of true God Guard captains, I wouldn't have been able to break through until now, right? The ancestor of the past turned and left. Berserk Corpse, clean. The voices of the 6 parties wanting to be connected became louder and louder. No one wanted to leave their own spacetime. For safety, the cultivators who had to go to other spacetime parallel to the Genesis space were the most enthusiastic. If the Genesis space was connected, they could return to their hometowns. These people were only responsible for making noise so that more people could hear them. As for how to solve the problem, it was not within their consideration. At this moment, even above heaven would find it difficult to stop them. These people would target anyone who tried to stop the connection of the parallel spacetime. Sometimes humans were selfish. However, they were not wrong. They were all doing this to survive. Connecting all the parallel spacetime was the best way to deal with the eternal race. The eternal race did not sit around and wait for death. They also allowed the spies who had not been exposed to make noise to stop the connection of the parallel spacetime. This move was too stupid in Wang Wen's eyes. Humans should do what the eternal race did not allow. This was absolutely true. When Lu Yin said this to the Void Master, the latter felt a headache coming on. He looked at Lu Yin. I would never have thought that the little guy who did not dare to reveal his identity in front of me and tried his best to stay in the Void God spacetime would reach this step. Now you're starting to force me. Lu Yin was helpless. Senior, you're definitely not forcing me. You also want to defeat the eternal race. After several fierce battles, the first zone of disaster, the corpse god, and the end of ruins, don't you understand? Only by working together can we win. The eternal race's so-called God's commandment is the same. We have to work together to eliminate the scattered enemy civilizations. We humans are best at remembering history and not letting it repeat itself. The Void Master rolled his eyes. There's no point in talking so much. Let me tell you, if I don't want to, no one can swallow the Void God spacetime. Lu Yin raised his brows. But if I want to, no one can stop the Void God spacetime from merging with you, the Void Master quickly added. Lu Yin was speechless. Senior, you're so generous. The Void Master opened his mouth to say something but thought for a moment. How do you plan to merge? What about me? What do you plan to do? Those who could cultivate to the level of the Void Master and Wood Deity were not fools. They had already seen through the situation, but they did not have the ability to achieve it. Lu Yin's appearance was also what they wanted. Even if the civilizations were ruled by the above heaven sect, it was better than being wiped out by the eternal race. Lu Yin looked at the Void Master with bright eyes. Of course I have plans. I guarantee you'll be satisfied. After Lu Yin left the Void God spacetime, Wood Deity appeared. You agreed. The Void Master exhaled. Didn't you agree too? We had a discussion before. If we want to defeat the eternal race, we have to work together. But we couldn't do it at that time. We all had our own ideas. The arrogance of the 3 venerables and 9 sages in the reincarnation spacetime, the unparalleled cultivation of the grand celestial Zhou Xian's scheming, and Shaoyin Divine Lord's tricks made it impossible to work together. Forming the 6-party society was already the limit. Wood Deity looked into the distance. Who would have thought that the desolate origin space would stand up again? In fact, only the origin space can suppress the reincarnation spacetime. The Void Master looked at Wood Deity. Can we really defeat the eternal race if we work together? Wood Deity's eyes flashed. If we don't work together, we'll never win. If we really defeat the eternal race, what's next? The Void Master asked. Wood Deity was silent for a moment. I'm tired. After so many years, I've wanted to let go. Are you trying to avoid it? What about you? What do you want to do? The Void Master was melancholy. If there are enemies outside, there will be harmony among us. We have the same goal. If there are no enemies, there will be conflicts. Who do you think the enemy will be? Wood Deity smiled. It has nothing to do with me. As long as we defeat the eternal race, I will disappear and never care about the world again. The Void Master rolled his eyes. Cunning old thing. Fine, call me when the time comes. We'll go together and not get involved in these trivial matters. Chapter 31-37. On the other side, Lu Yin arrived at the Lost Clan's spacetime and met with their Grand Elder. The Lost Clan's presence was the lowest among the 6 directions, even lower than the 3 sovereigns' spacetime. This was not because they were weak, but because they were too isolated and incompatible with other civilizations. Due to Shaoyin's deliberate instigation, the Lost Clan did not have a good impression of the reincarnation spacetime and were unwilling to communicate with other civilizations. However, they were friendly to Lu Yin. In the Grand Elder's heart, Lu Yin was the person who could draw out the ancient card. After quietly listening to Lu Yin, the Grand Elder finally shook his head. I'm sorry, Master Lu, but we do not agree to connect space-time. Lu Yin was surprised. Why? Shaoyin is a traitor and other civilizations can get along well with the Lost Clan. Especially after the establishment of the Six Directions training grounds, many people have chosen the Lost Clan's cultivation method. The Grand Elder raised his hand to stop Lu Yin. Getting along with other civilizations is not a problem, but connecting space-time is out of the question. Can you tell me why? Lu Yin asked. Grand Elder Shangu stood up and thought for a moment. If someone else asked, I would only say no comment. But since it's you, Master Lu, you're making things difficult for me. Lu Yin looked at Grand Elder Shangu. The everlasting race is the mortal enemy of mankind. Now that there is hope to defeat them, why not do it? Grand Elder Shangu turned his back to Lu Yin. Can we really defeat them? Lu Yin answered in a low voice, yes. Grand Elder Shangu laughed and looked back at Lu Yin. The only true God cannot be defeated. If we don't do it, we won't even have a chance to defeat them. If we haven't done it before, why not give it a try? Does Grand Elder really want to restore the previous situation? The boundless battlefield of the millstone of life and death, the border battlefield with danger at every step and the spies everywhere. This is not good for the Lost Clan. Once the Six Directions Association is destroyed, the Lost Clan will not be able to survive alone, Lu Yin said. Grand Elder Shangu nodded. Very persuasive, but I still refuse. Lu Yin frowned. I want to know the reason or I won't give up. In Lu Yin's opinion, the Void God spacetime and the Wood spacetime were not too big of a problem. Void Master and Wood God were aloof from worldly affairs, and they also sincerely wanted to defeat the everlasting race. The reincarnation spacetime was powerful with a Grand Empyrean Overseer, so Lu Yin did not care whether it was connected to the origin space or not. Therefore he put the Lost Clan at the end because he felt that the Lost Clan was the hardest to convince. This was indeed the case. It was one thing for him to be difficult to convince, but he wasn't even willing to tell him the reason. If not for the fact that the Lost Clan was human, Lu Yin would have suspected that this civilization was in cahoots with the everlasting race. Grand Elder Shangu sighed. Even if you defeat the Eternals, what happens next? The war will never stop. The Above Heaven sect will have its glorious moments and also its weak moments. In any case, it is war. Rather than humans killing each other, why don't we deal with external enemies? Lu Yin frowned. So the Eternals are allowed to exist? Great Elder Dangu didn't say anything, remaining silent. Lu Yin laughed in exasperation. This reason is too far-fetched. No matter what happens to the human race in the future, the blood debts of the past must be repaid. What about those who risked their lives for the human race and fought against the Eternals? Speak. If you have the same thoughts as Great Elder, then there is no need to fight with the Eternal race. You can even join the Eternal race. In any case, you can keep your human identity, so why not? Great Elder, your words are the greatest insult to those who died in battle. These words showed that Lu Yin was really angry. He could understand the fear of death, the avoidance of responsibility, and even the betrayal, but he couldn't understand Great Elder Dangu's negative attitude. This attitude was even more hateful than those traitors. Those traitors were just a part of the war. Since there was a war, there would be traitors. Everyone knew that traitors couldn't escape the war, but such a negative attitude could easily lead to the collapse of the war. In the past, Lu Yin had respected Great Elder Dangu very much. He felt that the Lost Clan's ancient card was very likely to bring about a breakthrough for the human race. It was a bargaining chip to defeat the Eternals in the future. Moreover, Great Elder Dangu had treated him well. He had helped him hide the matter of the ancient card and had even given him eternal darkness. The Lost Clan had also helped him in battle. For this reason, Dan Pu had died in battle. In the Six Directions Society, the Lost Clan had supported him earlier than the Void God universe and the Wood universe. However, support was one thing, and whether or not they were willing to connect with other parallel universes was another. Lu Yin knew that the Lost Clan was xenophobic, so he had been thinking about how to persuade Great Elder Dangu, but he hadn't expected Great Elder Dangu to have such thoughts. This showed that they didn't want to fight against the Eternals at all. Everything they were doing now was because they were forced. Lu Yin stood up and stared at Great Elder Dangu. Senior, I don't know what the Lost Clan has experienced, but I know that no matter how desperate it is, there will always be a way out. There are no absolutes in the universe. Since we humans were born, we won't die so easily. With people there will be disputes, but this is not a reason for the Eternals to continue to exist. At this point he remembered what Hongyan Mavis had said. Lu Yin had asked her why the above heaven era hadn't destroyed the Eternals and allowed them to grow. Hongyan Mavis agreed with the progenitor's reasoning. Even if the Eternals weren't an enemy, there would be other enemies. Perhaps she had said it, or perhaps it had been the progenitor who had said it. No species could be eternal. Without the suppression of an enemy, humanity would definitely reach the peak. This was not in accordance with the laws of the universe, which was why the Eternals were the enemy. If the Eternals didn't exist, there would be other enemies. This was the reason why the progenitor had allowed the Eternals to continue to exist. However, Great Elder Dangu had denied humanity's existence. This was the reason why the Eternals continued to exist. No matter how dignified or reasonable these reasons were, in Lu Yin's opinion, they were all nonsense. Whether it was the Eternals or other enemies, they would deal with them when they appeared. If they appeared, they would fight them. If they appeared, they would kill them. Were they supposed to wait for their enemies to grow stronger and suppress humanity instead? This was the right way to go. Lu Yin didn't agree with the progenitor's philosophy. If he had been the progenitor, he would have destroyed the Eternals and any species that appeared in the universe that threatened humanity. Even if the outcome was worse, could it be worse than the present? The progenitor couldn't predict the future. The bridge that fate had built in the River of Time had an end, but the River of Time had no end. No one could foresee what would happen to humanity in the future. Perhaps they would destroy their enemies, or perhaps they would be destroyed by them. Regardless of the situation, the most important thing was to take care of the present. Lu Yin only wanted to destroy the Eternals. He didn't want humanity to reach the peak of glory. He only wanted to live an ordinary life. Even if it was just a short period of time. If the Eternals were destroyed, then there would be an internal war. So what? That was humanity's own choice. However, there was a precondition: the Eternals had to be destroyed. If all the cultivators of the Six-Way Society were to vote, I believe that all of them would want to destroy the Eternals. Even if the outcome was an internal war, dying at the hands of humanity would still be better than dying at the hands of the Eternals, Lu Yin said solemnly. Great Elder Dangu turned around and looked at Lu Yin. We can't find our home. Lu Yin was stunned. What did he mean? Great Elder Dangu's expression was complicated, and there was an indescribable sorrow in his eyes. We can't find our home. We had a home, and it was a magnificent world. There weren't just one or two people at my level of cultivation, but there were also people who were far stronger than me. However, all of them died. At this point, Great Elder Dangu seemed to recall something, and there was a hint of fear in his eyes. For a powerhouse like him, as long as they were not facing death, fear should have long since left their minds. We struggled and fought, and we went through a great war between different races. In the end, we defeated our enemy. That enemy seemed even more terrifying than the Eternals, and they had countless powerhouses. We won, and our world was preserved. But the moment we saw the glory of victory, everything changed. They died right in front of our eyes. Great Elder Dangu clenched his fists, and blood dripped down from his fingers onto the ground. That unimaginable existence was furious. Our enemy was that existence's servant, and he was furious. He said that we shouldn't have won, that we should have been destroyed, and that he wanted everything to start over again. However, we won, so he wanted the ending to follow his plan. He set everything on its path. At that moment, I saw the truth of the universe. It was laughable, truly laughable. We thought that we had won, but how much did we pay? So many powerhouses who returned from the past died in that battle, but in the end, this was the result. Great Elder Dangu suppressed his voice. He had lost his composure, and this was the first time Lu Yin had seen him lose his composure. His entire being sank into confusion, grief, and hatred. He stared at Lu Yin. Those powerhouses who have survived since ancient times, those ancestors, and those who have protected us are all dead. None of them can move in front of that existence. Not a single one. He growled. Why? Those powerhouses were so powerful that even I couldn't reach them, but they were easily wiped out by that existence. They had no chance of surviving, just so that the ending he had set wouldn't be disrupted. That's all, that's all. Ah, laughable, laughable. Tell me, why did we risk our lives? Was it just to complete someone else's game? Everyone has put in countless years of hard work, but it all turned into bubbles in a single day. Only us remnant races managed to escape. This is the only pity left by that existence. Maybe in his eyes we can't even be considered as ants. Lu Yin's eyes flickered. When did this happen? Great Elder Dangu took a deep breath and closed his eyes. After a long time he calmed down and waved his hand tiredly. Master Lu, please do as you wish. I'll rest for a while. Lu Yin stood where he was, not daring to believe that he had heard wrongly. Powerhouses who far surpassed Great Elder Dangu had been easily wiped out by some existence? Such an existence existed? Chapter 31-38. Even if the sole true God wanted to kill experts who had surpassed Grand Elder Shangu so easily, it would be quite impossible. No, those who had surpassed Grand Elder Shangu were at the primordial realm at the very least. It was impossible for the sole true God to kill experts at that level so easily. Elder Shangu's words were too strange. There should not be such an existence, and if there really was one, what were they doing right now? Lu Yin did not rush Elder Shangu and allowed him to calm down. Lu Yin also needed some time to calm himself down. He could tell that Elder Shangu was telling the truth. Such a powerhouse had lost control of his emotions just because of his memories. Was there really a ruler in this universe who viewed everyone as ants? Was that person a human or something else? Lu Yin finally understood why the Lost Clan had such an attitude towards the everlasting race. He had always felt that the Lost Clan lacked something. Now that he thought about it, it was their competitive spirit. They did not have the determination to fight the everlasting race. No matter how many battles they participated in, the entire Lost Clan could only passively participate under Elder Shangu's influence. Elder Shangu was afraid because he had placed his past on the current everlasting race and humans. He was afraid that after eradicating the everlasting race, an unimaginable existence would appear and return this universe to its original path. He had experienced the joy of victory, and countless people had fought for it for countless years. He had experienced the excitement of victory, but it had been instantly sent to hell and he had lost everything. He had also stayed in this universe for many, many years, and he did not want to experience it again. The conflict between humans was just an excuse. He was afraid of losing the Six Direction Society and everything he had seen. Perhaps he was also afraid of that existence. Just as he had said, that existence was omnipotent. Then what about himself? If such an existence really existed, what would happen to the primordial space, the abode one above, and himself? Several days later, Elder Shangu appeared in front of Lu Yin again. He had already recovered, and he looked at Lu Yin apologetically. Master Lu, I'm sorry. There are some things that I didn't want to talk about, but I did. Lu Yin raised a hand and stopped Elder Shangu from speaking. He smiled. Elder, what is the purpose of living? Elder Shangu was stunned. He had thought that Lu Yin would be as dejected as he was. After all, if such an existence really existed, then all of humanity's struggles would be meaningless. Do you think I'm lying to you? Lu Yin shook his head and clasped his hands behind his back. Of course not. I know that you're telling the truth. Then why are you still laughing? Great Elder Dangu looked at Lu Yin, but he did not understand what he was laughing about. How many years had this matter been weighing down on his heart and the entire Lost Clan, causing them to live like ants? Among the Six Direction Guilds, the Lost Clan was definitely not the weakest, but they were the most low-key. They had escaped. They had an inferiority complex. Lu Yin stretched lazily. Life and death, this is a very serious topic. Life represents the beginning and death represents the end. Great Elder, are you afraid of death? Of course not. Great Elder Shangu blurted out. If he was afraid of death, there wouldn't have been a bloody battle back then. Lu Yin shrugged. Then that's fine. You're not even afraid of death, so what are you afraid of? Are you afraid that everything you do will be meaningless? Are you afraid that the person you reunite with will die again? Were they afraid that the human race would perish? To be honest, this is none of your business. Great Elder Shangu was stunned. Lu Yin's words were too rude. No one had ever spoken to him like this. His temperament gave people the feeling that he was an otherworldly expert. When he had first met Lu Yin, he had intimidated Lu Yin and had even said a bunch of things that extreme powerhouses could not do. This had given Lu Yin time to think. Such a person should be a teacher, a senior expert, and someone who would be respected by others. However, he had never expected that one day a young man would say to him, "What does this have to do with you?" Lu Yin looked at Great Elder Shangu in amusement. Senior, aren't you thinking too much? Are you the savior of humanity? Do you have the responsibility to save all of humanity? Just take care of yourself. If that existence wants to set the trajectory, that's his business. You're unlucky to have met him, but we might not be so unlucky. Even if we were unlucky, we've already met him. If we die, everything will end. What does the rest have to do with you? Aren't you thinking too much? Or are you worried that the Lost Clan will be exterminated as well? If that's the case, then the Lost Clan might as well commit suicide. After all, we're all under someone else's control. Great Elder Xiangu stared at Lu Yin in a daze. Lu Yin continued, is that existence something you can deal with? Is it something we can deal with? Since no one can, then let him be. If he really appears one day and wants our lives, then we'll just give it to him. Is there a need to be so scared? You don't even dare to connect with other civilizations. Great Elder, are you getting old? The older you get, the more afraid you are of death? Lu Yin's words were not polite, but he was actually venting. If there really was such an existence as Great Elder Xiangu had described, who would not be afraid? It would be strange if they were not afraid. Lu Yin was also afraid, but what could he do? Was he supposed to do nothing like Great Elder Xiangu and just play with the Eternals? To kill time? Wait until he died and leave the problem to the future generations? Lu Yin could not do that. Master Lu, if we destroy the Eternals one day and that existence appears to wipe out all of humanity, then the trajectory of the universe will be redrawn. What should we do then? Great Elder Dangu asked as he stared at Lu Yin. This was a question that he had pondered for a very long time. He had always wondered what he would do if he were to return to his hometown and meet his seniors, old friends and comrades. Would he stop them? Lu Yin sighed. If we can beat them, then we'll fight them. If we can't, then we'll curse them and die. Great Elder Xiangu was stunned. Curse them? Curse them? Lu Yin smiled. As a person, one should have a clear conscience. Who cares if they have other enemies? Who cares if there's an omnipotent existence? How many of our seniors have fought to the death with the Eternals? Burial Garden, the boundless expanse, those skeletons, those sounds of battle. Are they just for fun? Just for fun? I want to destroy the Eternals. Even if the final price is mutual destruction, it's still better than being tortured to death by the Eternals. I want to be worthy of those who participated in the war and those who died for humanity. Perhaps I'll be one of them, but one day that omnipotent existence will be destroyed. It's not like he was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. I don't believe that he's invincible from the moment he's born. Great Elder Xiangu had a complicated look in his eyes. He had thought about this for many years, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized that his words were meaningless. That existence could erase everything, and it was truly omnipotent. Lu Yin frowned. This old man was really stubborn. But then again, after living for so many years, he had heard all sorts of things. Lu Yin's own words were nothing special. I've met the primogenitor. Great Elder Xiangu was shocked, and he looked at Lu Yin in astonishment. The primogenitor of the primordial space? Lu Yin nodded. He said that there is no limit to the universe. If there's no limit, then it's not in line with the laws of the universe. The existence you're talking about is already a kind of limit. Do you think such an existence can really play around with the universe and be omnipotent? If that's the case, then what's the point of the universe existing? Great Elder Xiangu's body trembled. There was no limit? Was there really no limit? Everything has its own counter. If that existence you speak of is omnipotent, then why did the enemies of your homeworld appear? Why did the Eternals appear in our universe? He might be very strong, so strong that no one can resist him, but there must be a limit. Lu Yin was certain, and he looked at Great Elder Xiangu. Perhaps you defeated the enemies of your homeworld and placed some kind of restriction on him, which is why he destroyed your homeworld. You can't see it, but that doesn't mean that it didn't happen. Perhaps he doesn't see you as ants and doesn't care if you escape, but rather that he doesn't have the ability to kill you. Great Elder Xiangu wanted to refute this, but he couldn't find a reason to do so. Everything was just his own guess. Lu Yin stared at Great Elder Xiangu. Do you know what realm the primogenitor is at? Great Elder Xiangu shook his head. I don't know. Lu Yin's expression turned cold. Eternal life. Impossible. There are no eternal powerhouses in this universe, Great Elder Xiangu blurted out. Lu Yin laughed. The primogenitor alone suppressed everything in this universe. He controlled the sequence of strings. Great Elder Xiangu's pupils shrank. Others might not understand. Even if Void Master and Wood God knew about the selection of sequences, they might not understand what it meant to control the sequence of strings. However, Great Elder Xiangu knew. In his hometown, there had been a grand war that revolved around the sequence of strings of the universe. The last war was also related to it. The primogenitor controlled the sequence of strings? Lu Yin's voice was low. That is the origin or end of all the sequence of strings. In short, the primogenitor alone controlled it. Otherwise, the Eternals would have already destroyed this universe. Why do you think the primogenitor didn't appear? Great Elder Xiangu was shocked. He had always thought that the primogenitor of the primordial space was dead. This opinion came from the Grand Empyrean. He had never come into contact with the primordial space and had never seen the era of the above heavens. Now Lu Yin was saying that if the primogenitor really controlled the sequence of strings, then he might really be an eternal powerhouse. There was actually such a powerhouse in this universe. Lu Yin suddenly raised a finger which startled Great Elder Dan Gu. Once, Great Elder Xiangu was confused. Lu Yin raised another finger. Twice. Then he raised a third finger. Thrice. You destroyed the trajectory set by that existence again and again. Do you think he is really safe? Great Elder Xiangu stared at Lu Yin. Lu Yin gritted his teeth. I don't believe it. There is no limit in this universe. This is what the primogenitor said. Limits go against the universe. If there is a limit, then there will be restrictions. Your homeworld won once and that existence took action. The restrictions must have affected him. If you win again or even twice, even if you can't kill him, you can still take revenge. Great Elder, the blood of your comrades will never be cold. They need to be poured on that existence's face. Even if you can't kill him, you need to disgust him. We in this universe will accompany you. Even if the human race is destroyed, even if the universe is rebooted, we will do our best. Chapter 31-39. Lu Yin had said a lot, even more than what he had said to the 9-star civilization's mentor, Karkoan. Although all of his words were guesses, Great Elder Gu's worries stemmed from his fear of that existence. The lost race had to be connected to the Genesis space, and the sect above heaven needed to gather the strength of all civilizations to defeat the everlasting race. The everlasting race no longer had the ability to destroy civilizations one by one. Everything Lu Yin was doing was speeding up the everlasting race's destruction. The premise was that the everlasting race did not have an invincible powerhouse. 2 of the 3 masters and 6 voids had not appeared, which was an uncertain factor. Other than that, they had paid a huge price to see the everlasting race clearly. As for those who could not see clearly, such as why Wu Tian had stayed in the 3rd Calamity region and Wei Nu, they could not wait any longer. They would take the initiative to see clearly and uncover the mystery. When Mr. Mu handed the 8 astral gates to Lu Yin, it was equivalent to telling Lu Yin that it was time to act. It was time for the humans to unite and truly wage a decisive battle against the everlasting race. Great Elder Dan Gu looked outside silently. Lu Yin's words kept echoing in his mind. He knew that Lu Yin's words were mostly guesses, but at their level of cultivation, guesses had to be based on facts. There shouldn't be a limit. That existence could indeed be contained. Should they use victory after victory and risk the extermination of their clan time and time again to resist that existence? Great Elder, I have 2 points to make. Lu Yin's tone turned cold. Great Elder Gu looked at him. Lu Yin met his gaze. First, you don't have to worry about the people of our universe. We have our own ideas. We are willing to fight and live with the backbone of humanity. That is our business. Since the lost race does not belong to our universe, you don't have to care about us. Our life and death have nothing to do with you. Second, on the basis of the first point, although the lost race does not belong to our universe, we have not given up on you. Otherwise, you would have faced the everlasting race alone. Now that we have united to fight the everlasting race, you cannot stay out of this. Otherwise, I have my own methods. Don't blame me for being rude. I respect you very much. Your lost clan has helped me a lot, but this is not a reason for you to watch the show from the back and let us fight to the death. You have to join forces with us. This spacetime must be connected to the primordial space. I have already told you so much. If you are still not willing, don't blame me for being rude. Great Elder Dan Gu didn't get angry and he just calmly looked at Lu Yin. Lu Yin stared at him. You can take it as a threat, but you can also take it as a final piece of advice. I've already told you enough. If you still can't figure it out, then I'll have to use my own methods. I will repay the kindness that your lost clan has shown me. I will repay you personally. Connecting you to the primordial space is to deal with the overall situation of the Eternal Clan. Don't be confused about this. Great Elder Shangu looked deeply at Lu Yin. Master Lu, there's no need to say anything more. We are willing to connect. Lu Yin raised an eyebrow. What was the meaning of this? Was everything he had said before nonsense? Great Elder Shangu's gaze was complicated. Actually, I would have agreed even if you didn't have to threaten me. You are right. I am afraid that I will lose everything again. But what is there for me to care about? I don't belong here. I have always been xenophobic because I don't want to lose anything. Now I have nothing to lose, so I don't have to be afraid of anything. As for the Lost Clan, we have already escaped. After escaping once, I don't want to do it again. Otherwise, our clan's courage will be gone. Master Lu, don't underestimate us. In the decisive battle in our hometown, our Lost Clan was also at the forefront. More than half of our clan died, but none of us retreated. Lu Yin heaved a sigh of relief. Good. Thank you for your support, Great Elder. Great Elder Shangu looked at Lu Yin with admiration. In our hometown, the decisive battle was also initiated by a young man. You are both like him and not like him. Lu Yin wasn't interested in asking. The person that the Great Elder was talking about was definitely dead. There was no need to care too much about a dead person. Senior, what level does the ancient card correspond to? Can I try to attract the ancient card now? Great Elder Shangu shook his head. You must break through to the extreme realm, which is the progenitor realm in your primordial space. Only then can you try to attract it. The transformation of my strength is no different from an ordinary person breaking through to the progenitor realm. Great Elder Shangu was serious. Attracting the ancient card is not child's play. If you can't attract it, you might attract that existence. Lu Yin was shocked. That omnipotent existence? Great Elder Shangu nodded. We can't find the way home. Maybe that existence isn't in this universe. But if you try to attract the ancient card, you might attract his attention. After all, the ancient card was given to him. He should have remembered the ancient card. What realm does the ancient card correspond to? Lu Yin asked. He guessed that it should correspond to the primordial realm. The primordial realm was above the progenitor realm, but whether or not it was depended on Great Elder Shangu's strength. It seemed that no one had truly forced out Great Elder Shangu's strength. They only knew that he was definitely not weaker than the Void Master or Wood God. The Lost Clan was xenophobic and Great Elder Shangu rarely fought. Even when the Grand Empyrean Patriarch Lu Yuan and the others had fought against the only true god and the 7 sky gods, Great Elder Shangu had used a 7-star archaic card. This was what Patriarch Lu Yuan had told Lu Yin. Great Elder Shangu was something that Patriarch Lu Yuan cared about. It was normal that Patriarch Lu Yuan could not see through Great Elder Shangu, as the Lost Clan's cards were strange and difficult to see through. Lu Yin's question was actually a way to test Great Elder Shangu's strength. Great Elder Shangu naturally understood. The ancient card corresponds to the primordial realm. Lu Yin was disappointed. The primordial realm meant that Great Elder Shangu was at most a peak progenitor. It was a pity that he had not reached the primordial realm. It was a pity that he cared so much about the ancient card. Actually, this result was not surprising. If the ancient card was really that powerful, then even a Grand Empyrean would have appeared when a corner of it had been drawn over. However, the Grand Empyrean had never mentioned it. Clearly, the ancient card was not important enough for her to care about. Back then, everyone had thought that the Grand Empyrean was an apex expert. The Void Master had even said that he could see the difference between them and the Grand Empyrean, but the Grand Empyrean was actually undergoing bitter adversity. The difference that the Void Master saw was just what he thought it was. Back then, they had all thought that the ancient card surpassed apex experts, so it naturally surpassed the Grand Empyrean. However, they were all wrong. The Grand Empyrean was above the primordial realm and was on the same level as primogenitors. The Lost Clan's ancient card was once believed to be the opportunity for the humans to defeat the Eternals. Now it seemed that some people were right. It was just a method for the Lost Clan to raise their status. The higher they raised themselves, the less people dared to provoke them and the more stable they would be. Seeing Lu Yin's expression, Great Elder Shangu smiled. Are you very disappointed? Lu Yin didn't hide anything. A little. The Grand Empyrean is undergoing bitter adversity, which surpasses the primordial realm. If the ancient card only corresponds to the primordial realm, then how can it help that existence? He didn't continue, but his meaning was clear. It wasn't worth much. It wasn't worth it to attract that omnipotent existence over such a worthless card. Great Elder Shan Gu said, the ancient card does correspond to the primordial realm, but what if it isn't an ancient card? Luyin was surprised. Not an ancient card? Great Elder Shan Gu lowered his voice slightly. Can the ancient card attract the attention of that omnipotent existence? That card carried my clan to this universe. Can be said that the survival of my clan is related to it. As for what level it is, you can think for yourself. However, for now, it is an ancient card and it can only be an ancient card. Luyin understood and didn't say anything more. The Lost Clan had given him a pleasant surprise, and they might give the Eternals a pleasant surprise in the future. After dealing with the Lost Clan, Luyin finally calmed down. Next was the Limitless Empire. He didn't plan to use the Stargate to connect the various parallel universes. That was the connection method of the endless battlefield, and it wasn't safe. During the Above Sky Sect's Bitter Adversity Expedition, the Stargate of the Nine-Star Civilization had been destroyed by the spies. The spies' cultivation wasn't high, but because the Stargate belonged to the Eternals, they had a way to destroy it. In Lu Yin's opinion, the Stargate could only be a temporary passage. To truly connect the various parallel universes, it was either a coincidence like the Three Monarchs universes and the Fifth Mainland, or the Limitless Empire's method of connecting the universes. It wasn't difficult to find the Limitless Empire. Luyin returned to the Above Sky Sect. He saw Master Shan, Buqing, Fei Fei and Hong Yi. After capturing them, Luyin had an idea. He wanted them to cultivate and then use the energy source to tear through spacetime and find the universe where they were born. That universe was naturally the universe where the Limitless Empire was. Although the Limitless Empire had run away, these few were left behind as road signs. Young Master, the rest are dead. Only the three of them survived, Master Shan said. Luyin was surprised. How did they die? Master Shan said, they don't have strong wills. The Limitless Empire uses energy to fight, and if they cultivate, it will conflict with the energy. That's why the people of the Limitless Empire don't cultivate. Once they do, if their wills aren't strong enough, it's easy for them to be affected by the energy of the past, which will lead to chi deviation and death. Before they started cultivating, they also said that the Limitless Empire tried to train a group of people, but most of them failed. It's normal for them to die. The three of them have stronger wills. Luyin looked at Buqing and the others. They faced Luyin and quickly bowed. Greetings, Pathmaster. Greetings, Pathmaster. Greetings, Pathmaster. Luyin was satisfied. Although their cultivation isn't high, their attitude is good. How's the energy source? Master Shan said, I'm not very familiar with it. Take them to a parallel universe with a different flow of time and cultivate for a few more days. Gather here in 5 days. I'm going to the Limitless Empire, Luyin said. Thank you. Desert Dust is finished. Brother, I'll give you a reward. Thank you. Chapter 3140. Buqing and the others looked at each other with excitement and apprehension. They could finally return, but luring such a colossus to the Limitless Empire would only bring disaster to them. However, they had no choice. If they did not bring him along, they would die. Hong Yi had no misgivings as she was the first to join Luyin. Her father had reached the peak of the Limitless Empire, and he would either have to step down or be crushed to death by his competitors. There was no third option, but the appearance of the Above Heaven sect had shown her a third option. By joining the Above Heaven sect and borrowing its power, they would be able to go even further in the future. Father, I'm back. Master Shan led them away while Luyin went to the Wood Spacetime Continuum, the Void God Spacetime Continuum, and finally the Astral Tree Spacetime Continuum. The Limitless Empire was not for fun. There would definitely be a huge battle, and they would not cooperate until the Limitless Empire was subdued. Luyin did not plan on wasting time with the Limitless Empire. They were not a gift from Mr. Mu, so there was no friendship between them. 5 days later, Master Shan brought Buqing and the others back. At this moment, the three of them had improved their cultivation by quite a bit. Due to the different flow of time in the parallel spacetime, they had been able to cultivate for more than 5 days. Furthermore, they were already very familiar with the use of energy sources. Let's go, Limitless Empire. Lu Yin clasped his hands behind his back as the progenitors looked on expectantly. Bu Qing looked at them and felt like he had invited a wolf into his house. It had always been the limitless empire that made other civilizations feel this way. Now they were about to taste their own medicine. Using the energy sources, Bu Qing tore through the void and found the spacetime where he had been born. Lu Yin's lips curled up as he stared at her. She took a deep breath and took a step forward, entering the spatial tear and disappearing. Right after that, Xianxia stepped out and was the second to enter. Then he quickly followed suit, followed by Hong Yi, Su Wei, Big Sis and wood carving. Finally, Lu Yin stepped out and disappeared. They had entered the limitless empire's space-time. It was impossible to determine where they would appear after tearing through space-time, but it was most likely in outer space. This time they had appeared in outer space as well. Lu Yin walked out of the spatial tear and looked around. There was no cultivation energy in this space-time, which meant that no progenitors who could change the heavens and earth had appeared here. In fact, this was the situation in most parallel spacetimes. Not every parallel spacetime could produce such powerhouses. Not every spacetime was suitable for cultivation. It didn't take long for Bu Qing and the others to find a direction and lead them into the distance. Not long after, she reminded them, "We'll reach Limitless Emperor's capital if we continue forward. It seems like there's nothing in space, but it's actually being monitored. It won't be easy for us to enter." Lu Yin summoned the 7-star mantis and had everyone mount it. He then spread out his 6 wings and flew at a speed comparable to the speed of time. Not even a progenitor would be able to detect them if they were standing in front of him. Bu Qing and Fei Fei were stunned. What kind of speed was this? The surroundings were actually still. Wood carving, Void Wei, Big Sister and Xianxia, the 4 progenitors, were not too surprising. Xianxia had once possessed the power of time, so the other 3 progenitors would not be too shocked in the face of such speed. Soon after, Lu Yin and the rest saw a huge city. It was grand and majestic as it stretched across the heavens. It was similar to the above the heavens but not as large. From a distance it looked like a horizontal mirror. The closer they got, the clearer they could see the layout of the city. It was clearly a city of science and technology. The city was built in the starry sky. The 7-star mantis could easily charge into the city, and the imperial city could not stop its speed. However, Lu Yin did not underestimate this place. The imperial city could not stop the 7-star mantis because it was too large, but it would be different if they went to Emperor Shang's territory. There were mechas there that could fight against Sequence Law's powerhouses, and Emperor Shang's unlimited mecha was known as the Sovereign. It was said that it was indestructible, and it was protected by Optimus Prime and the other 12 ring mechas. It would not be easy to deal with, which was why Lu Yin had brought wood carving and the rest along. The Limitless Empire was a powerful civilization that was qualified to fight against the Eternals. There was no need to start a war right away, so it was best to understand the situation first. Their target was the Empire's chief minister, Hong Yan. After entering the capital, Hong Yi easily found his home. There was a courtyard in the capital near Emperor Shang's imperial court. It was simple and unadorned, completely different from the futuristic style of the entire city. This courtyard was not the only one, as there were many similar courtyards all around. It did not seem to fit in with the rest of the city, but it was second only to the imperial court in the entire Limitless Empire. It was only separated by a single wall, and the people who lived here were the noblest people in the entire Limitless Empire. Hong Yi's home was in that courtyard. The chief minister of the empire was in charge of logistics. He did not seem to be very powerful, but his authority was immense. He could even directly influence the empire's expeditionary army, and he was undoubtedly one of the higher-ups in the entire Limitless Empire. Within the courtyard, Hong Yan was lost in thought as he stared at a star chart that depicted the 6th mainland. He only had one daughter, and now that she had been captured, he would look at the star chart every day, hoping that one day, the Limitless Empire would be able to kill their way into that space-time and rescue his daughter. He was different from Fei Yan. Fei Yan's actions were too obvious, but Hong Yan could not. He was the chief minister of the empire, and if his actions were too obvious, he would lose his position. But how could he get the Limitless Empire to kill their way into that spacetime? The only way was to use the 13-ring energy. That spacetime had the possibility of giving the Limitless Empire 13-ring energy, and as long as he could turn this possibility into reality, Emperor Shang would definitely not ignore it. Therefore, apart from meeting Emperor Shang every day, he would go to the research institute to test the energy of that spacetime. As long as he could obtain the 13-ring energy, everything would be fine. Even though that spacetime was very dangerous, extremely dangerous. Father. Hong Yan was startled. He seemed to have heard his daughter's voice. No, it was an illusion. He smiled bitterly. He missed his daughter so much that he was hallucinating. Thinking back to the time when she was born, and her naive and adorable appearance, Hong Yan's eyes turned red. He hid his emotions in the bottom of his heart, and he could not let Emperor Shang discover them. However, he had to find the 13-ring energy. Thinking of this, his gaze was firm. He turned around and was about to go to the research institute. Suddenly, his expression changed drastically. A few people had appeared behind him, and among them he saw his daughter. Little E. Hong Yi was excited. Father. Hong Yan stepped forward to hug his daughter, but instinctively stopped him. He looked at the people beside Hong Yi, Bu Qing and Fei Yan. They were all here. However, he looked at Mu Feng, big sister, and the others. Who are you? Is this the star chart of the 6th mainland? A voice came from behind and Hong Yan turned around. Another person had appeared in front of the star chart. He was very young and he was looking at the star chart with great interest. Hong Yan's eyes narrowed and he suppressed his excitement at seeing his daughter. He regained his composure. Are you from the 5th mainland? Lu Yin looked at Hong Yan and smiled. My name is Lu Yin and I'm the Tao Master of the 5th mainland's above heaven sect. You can call me Master Lu. Humans needed light and Limitless Empire also had light. Where there was light there was also darkness. The sky darkened and Big Sister and the others were no longer in the courtyard. They had gone out shopping and Bu Qing and the others were leading the way. Only Lu Yin stayed behind to talk to Hong Yan. Hong Yan already knew what had happened but he could not accept it. It had always been the Limitless Empire that invaded other parallel spacetimes, conquering and occupying them. But now they were being targeted by someone else. Of course, such things had happened before and the Limitless Empire had also been invaded by powerful enemies, but they had not done this. That powerful enemy had attacked as soon as they entered this spacetime, and war had immediately broken out. At this moment Hong Yan looked at the man in front of him. This person was not seeking revenge as he had not suffered any losses. He just wanted to obtain the Limitless Empire. Is that Dizun mecha that powerful? Lu Yin was curious. Hong Yan respectfully replied, very powerful. Even when the enemy attacked the Empire and destroyed Optimus Prime, they were unable to destroy the Dizun mecha. In the end it was Emperor Shang of that generation who dealt with the enemy. Lu Yin was interested. The mecha is powerful but your bodies are your greatest weakness. Do you think that if I suddenly attacked Emperor Shang he would have time to enter the mecha? Hong Yan bitterly replied, of course not. As long as you can enter the Imperial Court without being discovered, you can control Emperor Shang. The Dizun mecha is in the Imperial Court, and Emperor Shang only needs 1 second to enter. You can only control Emperor Shang for 1 second. Lu Yin's lips curled up. That's enough. Hong Yan sighed. He knew that the Limitless Empire was finished. This empire might not have been a match for that spacetime, but now that enemy had quietly entered the capital. Even if Emperor Shang was not controlled, what about the others? He did not really think that those powerhouses had gone shopping. They had all scattered and they had understood the capital in the shortest time possible. This Limitless Empire might have a new master. However, would Optimus Prime be so easy to control? Hong Yan felt uneasy. He was standing on Lu Yin's boat. If Lu Yin controlled the Limitless Empire he could be considered to have contributed. If he failed, Lu Yin and the others would definitely be able to leave but he would be in trouble. Master Lu, are your people going to control Optimus Prime? Hong Yan asked. Lu Yin did not hide anything. Of course. Didn't you say that Optimus Prime was protecting Emperor Shang? If we don't deal with them, how can we deal with Emperor Shang? Hong Yan was worried. It's not easy to control Optimus Prime. Lu Yin looked outside. Let's try. If it doesn't work, we'll use force. Hong Yan was nervous. He did not know what was waiting for him. He did not blame Hong Yi. Originally, the Limitless Empire's people could rely on the enemy. This was a life-saving method and Emperor Shang had tacitly agreed to it. However, he had been implicated. Whether it was because of his daughter or his own life, this was the only path left for him. He had no other choice. The Limitless Empire's capital was divided into 5 rings with the Imperial Court as the center. The Imperial Court was not counted. The first ring was where Hong Yen's family's courtyard was located. As for Optimus Prime, it was the power that guarded the Imperial Court. It was distributed in 5 directions. Thank you. Desert Dust. Brother, I'll give you the reward. Thank you. I've been socializing for the past few days. My head hurts. I can't even stay up late to write. I'll have to go on a business trip in 2 days. Thank you, brothers, for your support. Thank you. The next volume, Invincible, is about to start. Chapter 3141. With Bu Qing leading the way, Mu Yin saw the huge mecha on the walls of the Imperial Court. The mecha was inside the Imperial Court and only a small part of it could be seen. Hence it wasn't too conspicuous. This mecha is called Killer King. It belongs to Optimus Prime Huanzhan. Huanzhan is the chief instructor of the Empire Academy. He taught the current Emperor Shang. This mecha is equipped with the sharpest weapon in the history of Limitless Empire. That weapon is called Killer King. Hence, this mecha is also called Killer King, Bu Qing introduced. The wood carving looked up. The sharpest weapon? He really wanted to experience it. What about Huanzhan? Mu Yin asked. Bu Qing shook his head. I can only bring you here. My identity can't be exposed. Even in the past, I didn't have the right to meet Lord Huanzhan. His status is higher than my father. Even Emperor Shang has to be polite to him. Photo, Mu Yin said. Bu Qing found Huanzhan's photo easily. This wasn't a secret. After all, he was the chief instructor of the Empire Academy. Optimus Prime wasn't a secret either. Mu Yin grabbed a handful of dust and raised his hand. The dust flew with the wind towards the Imperial Court. It flew past the walls, past Killer King, and flew into the distance. He's in the mecha. Bu Qing said, what should we do? Wait. On the other side, Big Sister also saw an unlimited mecha under Hong Yi's lead. This limitless mecha is called Agony. It belongs to Optimus Prime. Lord Yingdu rarely makes a move, but every time he does he brings pain to his enemies. That's why he's the most feared of the Optimus Primes, Reddy said nervously. Big Sister sneered. What's the use of using external objects to reach such heights? Hong Yi was much smarter than Bu Qing. She had already prepared a photo of the 5 people. Big Sister glanced at it and then stared at the Imperial Court. He's in the mecha. But what should we do now? Find another one. At this moment, Su Wei also quickly led the way and saw an unlimited mech called Immortal. The owner of this mech was called Jiao Feng, and he was standing on the city wall at this moment. He knew that Jiao Feng was finished. If he didn't stay in the mecha, he would be an ordinary person. Su Wei made his move because Jiao Feng was about to enter the mech. Once he entered the mech, he would not be able to control him unless he broke the mech. On the city wall, Jiao Feng could directly enter the mecha from here. Just as he walked to the front of the mecha, his body froze. He couldn't move. His eyes darted around. What was going on? Why can't I move? Su Wei easily controlled Jiao Feng. It's done. Without the mecha, what would Limitless Empire amount to in front of this space-time civilization? Su Wei contacted Lu Yin. Lu Yin grunted. Thank you, Senior. It's no trouble. He's just an ordinary person. As soon as he finished speaking, a shrill alarm sounded in the Imperial capital. In front of Su Wei, the infinite mecha named Immortal glowed red, attracting the attention of the entire Imperial capital. Su Wei was dumbfounded. What was going on? Fei Fei's expression changed drastically. Not good, we've been discovered. In front of the Immortal mecha, Jiao Feng's eyes darkened. Someone wanted to control him. Was it an outsider? Or an insider? He didn't know, but this person was too naive. They were ordinary people and could be easily controlled. In order to deal with this situation, Optimus Prime and the other 4 had a strict time to leave the mecha. They couldn't return earlier or later. Once the timing was wrong, even if it was only for a second, the entire Imperial capital would be alerted. After all, Optimus Prime represented the safety of Limitless Empire and Emperor Shang. There was no room for carelessness. He was controlled and returned to the mecha late, which naturally led to the alarm. No one except Optimus Prime and the other 4 knew about this. Even the eldest Prince Shang Tianzong, the 5th Prince Shang Qing, and the 9th Princess Shang Anan didn't know, let alone Hong Yan. But now it didn't matter whether they knew or not. Jiao Feng was in trouble and the entire imperial capital was mobilized. In the center of the imperial capital, Emperor Shang's body sank and directly entered the Mecca. After so many years, the limitless imperial capital welcomed another enemy. Boom! The earth shook and a mecha landed beside Jiao Feng. It stood on the ground outside the city wall and stared at Jiao Feng. Jiao Feng still couldn't move. Su Wei was helpless. He didn't expect that something would happen here. In this case he could only attack. This mecha wanted to grab Jiao Feng. Jiao Feng couldn't move. Obviously he was controlled. He had to take him away first. At this time Su Wei attacked. The Taishan field was released in the entire imperial capital. Ordinary people couldn't see the lines in the space. Su Wei wouldn't attack ordinary people. Instead he attacked the mechas at the same time. There were at least 20 unlimited mechas in the imperial capital. Except for Optimus Prime's mecha, the rest were outside the imperial capital. When Su Wei attacked, half of the mechas fell to the ground. Not every mecha could fight against such a strong person. To fight against Su Wei one had to have at least 12 rings. Su Wei was a strong person with sequence rules. The unlimited mecha that wanted to take Jiao Feng away was Xianxia. Xianxia was attacked by the Taishan field. The destructive force formed by the collision of the virtual god's power forced him back. The surface of his body and ring energy shield were distorted. In Xianxia, a middle-aged man was shocked. Such strong destructive power? The mechas were all sounding the alarm. A long sword suddenly appeared in his hand. He slashed at Su Wei, who was locked on by the mecha. Above Su Wei's head a pot appeared. It was his natal virtual god. The virtual god's power surged wildly. However, it was cut open by the sword. The sword went straight for the pot. Su Wei couldn't believe it. His virtual god's power was cut open? What a sharp sword. The blade cut through the void effortlessly and landed on the walk with a loud sound. Cracks appeared on the walk, which made Su Wei feel as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. It was too sharp. It was not that his strength was inferior to the Imperial Killer, but that the blade was too sharp. It was unimaginably sharp. However, no matter how sharp the sword was, it was fine as long as it didn't cut. At this moment, a slash appeared from afar, slashing horizontally at the side of the Imperial Killer's saber. The saber of the Imperial Killer was incomparably gigantic. Compared to it, this slash was so small that it was almost invisible. However, it was precisely this slash that managed to push the gigantic saber away. The terrifying slash force caused everyone to look over. Another expert had arrived. At the same time, battles broke out in two other directions. The red spider lilies bloomed. Big Sister attacked the Infinite Agony Mecha. Xianxia fought against an Infinite Agony Mecha that was engraved with flowers. This Infinite Agony Mecha was called Flower Rain. The owner of this mecha was Emperor Shang's younger sister, Xianxia. Fierce battles broke out in all directions of the imperial court. The entire imperial capital was alerted and everyone evacuated. Hong Yan stood in the courtyard looking at the battle in the distance with a pale face. He was watching the wooden carving battle against Xianxia. He was very clear about how strong Xianxia was. He had seen many empire scrolls and knew that Xianxia wasn't created solely for Huanzhan. Instead, he had been created a long time ago. Huanzhan was only the master of this generation's Xianxia. Xianxia had an unparalleled blade that was so sharp that it could slice through the void. Ordinary people would be injured just by looking at it. It was the sharpest material in the history of the Limitless Empire. It represented the Empire's blade. But at this moment he actually saw someone fighting against Xianxia head-on. Xianxia's every slash was blocked by that person, and Xianxia was forced to retreat with each slash. Who are these people exactly? They were simply terrifyingly strong. Hong Yan looked back at Lu Yin. Lu Yin was also watching this scene. Interesting as expected of a 12-ring soul arcana. That limitless mecha had actually withstood Lu Yin's attack. Senior had even used the laws of the sequence. Although he couldn't see the particles, Lu Yin could sense that they were the laws of the sequence. However, it had still been blocked by that giant blade. A 12-ring soul armature indeed had the strength to fight against a sequence law powerhouse. However, it would still be defeated before long. A mecha wasn't a human and it had a limit. Blocking Senior was already its limit. The imperial capital was in chaos. The battle between Optimus Prime and a progenitor caused space-time to be unable to calm down. Lu Yin was calm. Hong Yan, Hong Yan hurriedly looked at Lu Yin. Master Lu. Let's go to the research center. Hong Yan was stunned and looked at the battle in the distance. Coincidentally, Huang Sha's sword sliced through the void and split it in two, revealing a world of nothingness. Hong Yan was stunned. If this had been his unlimited mecha, it would have been destroyed. Lu Yin didn't care. Lead the way. Hong Yan admired Lu Yin's spirit. He was able to remain calm in the face of such a magnificent battlefield. Hong Yan didn't know what Lu Yin had experienced. Was this battle very intense? No, it was far from enough to make Lu Yin pay attention. This was just a small battle, nothing more. He could leave it to Senior Woodcut and the others. He just wanted to see the research center. If a 12-ring soul armature could fight against a sequence law powerhouse, then what level could a 13-ring soul armature reach? 7 sky gods? Or the primordial realm? The primordial realm wasn't likely, as that was another level. However, it should be able to fight against the 7 sky gods. If it was possible, Lu Yin would fully support the research and strive to have more powerhouses on his side. The Eternals wanted to use numbers to suppress the humans, but Lu Yin wanted to use numbers to suppress the Eternals. He would use all means. Thus, the limitless empire couldn't be destroyed. He specifically reminded them that the Optimus Prime mecha was very precious. Hong Yan led the way, and Lu Yin took him to a parallel timeline and entered the Imperial Capital's research center. Within the Imperial Capital, the Limitless Empire attached great importance to the research center. After all, it was the foundation of their power. Lu Yin followed Hong Yan all the way to the research center, but he couldn't understand what he saw. There were all kinds of powers that the Limitless Empire had gathered from various parallel universes. There were many people here, all of whom were geniuses of the Limitless Empire's research center. The ground shook from time to time, causing dust to fall. These people were indifferent. It wasn't that they weren't afraid of death, but that the research center was so sturdy that they weren't afraid of the war outside. Chapter 3142. The sharpest material discovered in the history of the Limitless Empire was given to Huang Sha. The toughest material was used to create Emperor Shang's unlimited mecha and the Research Institute. Thus, this was the safest place in the Limitless Empire and was located within the Imperial Court. It could be said that even Emperor Shang would protect this place. Back then, a strong enemy attacked the Empire and almost destroyed the entire Optimus Prime. Huang Sha was smashed into pieces and could only rely on the Emperor to resist. In that battle, the Research Institute was not damaged at all, Hong Yan explained. Lu Yin followed Hong Yan all the way. Emperor Shang would never have dreamed that he had entered the place he cared about the most and believed to be the safest. The research of the astral source was the most important thing in the Research Institute. A large number of people were transferred to study it, and it was located in the deepest part of the Research Institute. Hong Yan brought Lu Yin here, but the people around acted as if they didn't see them. There was only a white-haired old man who kept giving orders. This is the director of the Research Institute. The 12-ring energy was developed by his mentor. The director's wish is to develop a 13-ring energy and surpass his mentor, Hong Yan introduced in a low voice. Lu Yin placed his hands behind his back and watched. The astral source was analyzed by various instruments and data was reported from time to time. The white-haired old man frowned as he studied it. This kind of state was somewhat crazy, but only this kind of person could do what ordinary people couldn't. The ground shook and the Research Institute exploded. The white-haired old man straightened up. What happened? Why did they fight all the way here? It's Huang Sha. Huang Sha cut off the upper echelons of the Research Institute. The white-haired old man roared, Huang Sha betrayed us. No, it's the enemy who led the attack and cut off the Imperial Court. The white-haired old man had a headache. As expected, a spacetime that can produce 13-ring energy is terrifyingly powerful. Perhaps they have a creature that can rival a 13-ring energy. No, they definitely do. Otherwise, this kind of energy can't reach the 13-ring level. Although the Empire retreated in time, we were still targeted. Lu Yin asked, then what should we do? Can the Empire stop them? The white-haired old man sighed. It's difficult. If the enemy uses a creature that can rival a 13-ring energy, the Empire definitely won't be able to stop them. The difference between a 12-ring and a 13-ring is huge. But if the enemy doesn't use that creature, the Empire won't lose. The Emperor is very strong and Optimus Prime isn't weak. But the enemy has a lot of experts. The Sovereign and Optimus Prime won't be enough, Lu Yin said. As long as the other party can't destroy Dizun, it's fine. They can. At this point, the white-haired old man angrily rebuked. Who dares to answer? Who is it? Everyone looked at Lu Yin. Lu Yin placed his hands behind his back and smiled at the white-haired old man. Nice to meet you, sect master of the above heaven sect, Lu Yin. The white-haired old man stared at Lu Yin in a daze, his left hand slowly reaching behind his back. Lu Yin looked at him. Do you have any means to protect yourself? Looks like you've recognized me. The old man stared at Lu Yin. You are a cultivator. Not bad. Cultivators from the civilization that attacked the empire. Yes. How did you get in? The old man saw Hong Yan. Did you betray the empire? Hong Yan was helpless and didn't speak. According to your empire's philosophy, it's not strange for him to betray you, Lu Yin said. The white-haired old man laughed. It seems that you know our limitless empire very well. Probably. Lu Yin sized up the white-haired old man. You can do as you please. I'm not stopping you and I have no intention of stopping you. You can only truly communicate with me after you've exhausted all your means. The white-haired old man's gaze turned cold. You're very confident. Lu Yin smiled faintly. So far there is nothing in this space-time that can threaten me. The white-haired old man glanced around and everyone looked at Lu Yin with surprise and apprehension. What are you looking at? Do your own thing, the white-haired old man shouted. He had great prestige here. Although everyone was afraid of Lu Yin, they still did their own things. The earth shook and a wisp of dust flew in front of the white-haired old man and Lu Yin. The white-haired old man slowly walked to a corner and said as he walked, "This place has the ability to protect itself. If you can break my self-defense mechanism, I will surrender to you according to the Empire's principles. I hope you won't harm the Huan Energy Research Institute." Lu Yin nodded. Of course. In the entire Limitless Empire, the strongest defense was the Dizun mecha. Although there were self-defense mechanisms here, they couldn't surpass the Dizun. This wasn't because Lu Yin understood the Limitless Empire, but because he understood human nature. If Emperor Shang died, the Research Institute would still exist. It would just be a wedding dress for someone else and it would be meaningless to Emperor Shang. Therefore, the Dizun mecha was the Limitless Empire's strongest defense. If Lu Yin couldn't even break the self-defense mechanism of the Research Institute, how could he break the Dizun mecha? What he wanted was to suppress the entire Limitless Empire. This was also why he didn't want the 5 mechas of Optimus Prime to be destroyed. Even if it was an external force, it was still a powerful force that could fight against a sequence low realm master. The white-haired old man had walked to the corner and looked back at Lu Yin. Seeing that Lu Yin really didn't intend to stop him, his heart sank. This person was either confident or arrogant. No matter which one it was, it meant that he had great strength. He had never experienced this feeling before. Let this old man see whether you're confident or arrogant. As he thought about it, he did something. Light spots appeared in the entire Huan Energy Research Institute and then gathered toward Lu Yin. They condensed into light walls from all directions like a prison, trapping Lu Yin and Hong Yan inside. These light spots could be controlled and appeared anywhere in the Research Institute. This was the Research Institute's self-defense mechanism. Hong Yan was shocked. Wall light. Didn't you say the research failed? The white-haired old man sneered. Since the Empire has a mission that allows people to surrender, it naturally has methods to prevent betrayal. This wall light is one of them. Sir, as long as you can walk out of it, I will be convinced. Hong Yan's face was ashen. Lu Yin looked at him. What happened? Hong Yan scolded Lu Yin for being careless, but he didn't dare to show it. He said in a low voice, "The wall light is the most advanced technology that the Empire once discovered in a civilization. I can't explain the specific technology. After all, I'm not a member of the Research Institute. However, this wall light defended against the Empire's attack and blocked the attacks of 3 12-ring mechas. In the end, it was broken by Huang Sha's slash. It may not be as strong as the Dizun mecha, but it's already the most invincible defense in the Empire. If it's not as sharp as Huang Sha, it can't break the wall light." The white-haired old man nodded. "You didn't come to the Research Institute in vain. You're right. This wall light is indeed second only to the Dizun mecha's defense, but it's not much worse. If you can break it, it means that you can also break the Dizun mecha's defense. If you're strong, the Research Institute can surrender. Lu Yin raised his hand and placed it on the wall light. He exerted force, but it didn't budge. Interesting. He continued to increase his strength until it was the strongest he could reach without using his unlimited inner world and visualization. However, it still couldn't move the wall light. The white-haired old man was proud. He had researched the wall light for more than 10 years. Although it couldn't compare to his mentor's 12-ring research, it was enough to go down in history. After all, before the wall light, the Limitless Empire's defense either came from materials or ring energy shields. However, he had innovated the Empire's defense method. Although it couldn't be popularized yet, there was always the possibility of it being popularized in the future. It would bring about a leap in the Empire's strength. Hong Yan looked at Lu Yin nervously. He had to break it. If he couldn't, it would be troublesome for them to be trapped here. This wall light could block the attacks of all 12-ring mechas except for Huang Sha. It was also a problem whether this person's subordinates could break it. He didn't want to be punished by the Empire for betraying them. Lu Yin praised, "It's a pretty good defense. To be honest, it's very difficult to break. Even sequence law powerhouses would find it troublesome." The white-haired old man wasn't happy about Lu Yin's words. Instead, he felt uneasy because Lu Yin was too calm. This was not the attitude of someone who had been imprisoned. The calmer Lu Yin was, the colder the old man felt. Lu Yin glanced at the old man and then pulled out many weapons from his cosmic ring. There were all sorts of strange weapons, but they all had one thing in common. They were difficult to use. That's right, these were the weapons that he had obtained from the monster ancestor. The monster ancestor had created many weapons for himself, and he had used the rarest of materials. Even the Daoist sect had been distressed by these materials, and Lu Yin had finally obtained them from the bottom of the astral river. He had wanted to dissect them, but he hadn't had the time to do so. Some of these weapons were extremely large, while others were extremely small. In any case, they weren't suitable for use. Lu Yin began to experiment, and he used these weapons to cut at the wall light one by one. He could break through the wall light on his own, but he wasn't confident that he wouldn't injure the research center. Since he had weapons, then he might as well use them. The white-haired old man Hong Yan and the people from the research center all stared blankly at Lu Yin as he tried out various weapons. There was a slash and there was a stab. Although these weapons couldn't be used no matter how one looked at it, the wall light was pierced through. The white-haired old man's mouth fell open. How could such a thing happen? Hong Yan was stunned as well. The wall light was a defense that only Huang Sha's sharpest blade could break through, but Lu Yin had actually managed to tear a hole in the wall light by using all sorts of strange weapons. Lu Yin smiled. "Sorry, there are too many weapons and some of them are very sharp. They broke through." The white-haired old man had considered the possibility that Lu Yin could break through the wall light with his own unimaginable strength or take out a peerless weapon. Either way, it would have been shocking, but it wouldn't have been too surprising. However, in this situation it seemed like Lu Yin had used a trick. Did this count? Even Hong Yan felt that Lu Yin was lucky to have so many sharp weapons. Lu Yin put away the monster ancestor's weapon. Actually, there was another weapon that could easily tear through the wall light, and that was Death God Go Lian. Lu Yin didn't know what material Go Lian was made of, but it was extremely sharp, and it was definitely much sharper than Huang Sha's. Using Death God Go Lian would be able to tear through the wall light like paper. However, there was no need for that. No matter how sharp a weapon was, it was useless if it couldn't be used. Enemies wouldn't just stand there and let you cut through them like the wall light. Otherwise, there was no need to cultivate, and it would be better to just look for materials. Chapter 3143. The Limitless Empire wasn't a cultivation civilization, so they were interested in materials. Lu Yin walked out of the wall and smiled. "Sir, you can fulfill your promise now." The white-haired old man smiled bitterly. "Sir, you're really—" At this moment, the ground shook violently and the old man's expression changed. "Dizun has made his move." Lu Yin raised his eyebrows. "Dizun of Emperor Shang?" The old man looked at Lu Yin. "Do you want to see Dizun's move?" Lu Yin gestured for him to go ahead. Soon, a screen appeared in the research center, and it showed the battle in Imperial Capital. Mu Carving, Big Sister, Su Wei, and Xia Xinji were fighting against Optimus Prime's huge mecha. Before Lu Yin came to the research center, Optimus Prime had sent out 4 mechas, but now only 3 were still standing. 2 had fallen, which meant that when Lu Yin was in the research center, Optimus Prime had sent out all 5 mechas, but 2 were still defeated. Xianxia's divine sword domain covered the sky above Imperial capital, bringing a terrifying pressure. Su Wuwei's virtual god power covered the entire Imperial capital like air. Pluto also walked out from behind Big Sister. The most dazzling was Mu Carving. When the screen was opened, Mu Carving's long sword cut the back of Killer Huang's mecha into 2. Mu Carving's sequence order was break. Although it wasn't sharp, it was sharp enough to block the order. After all, Killer Huang was a mecha controlled by someone. When facing a sequence order expert of the same level, especially one who was good at fighting like Mu Carving, it was only a matter of time before he was defeated. However, if he met an opponent who didn't reach the sequence order, Killer Huang would be slaughtered. Killer Huang's fall attracted Dizun. In the Imperial capital, a huge mecha that was half the size of the other mechas walked out. With the power of heaven, it punched at Mu Carving. The mecha's fist instantly turned red and pierced through the void. It was as if the white sky was dyed red and black. The wooden carving's eyes were piercingly cold as he sensed danger. He stared at Dizun and slowly raised his long blade before slashing out. This slash had once injured the corpse god and had the terrifying power to break through the defense of the 7 heavenly gods. This slash was called Void and it could cut through the rules. The sword slashed through. The venerable sovereign's punch was stopped, and his attack was forcibly restrained. However, the terrible power of his punch still blasted out and sent the wooden carving flying. Within the research facility, Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. What a powerful punch. This sovereign definitely had the destructive power of a 7 sky gods. After all, he had gathered all the resources of the limitless empire. Senior Brother Wood Carving's strike was only able to restrain his attack, but it was still unable to block the remaining power. On the surface, inside the Dizun mecha, Emperor Shang was shocked. He had actually blocked his punch. Even a 12-ring mecha wouldn't be able to withstand his punch. The Dizun mecha was fundamentally different from other mechas. Even if all the 12-ring mechas in the Limitless Empire worked together, they wouldn't be able to defeat a Dizun mecha. This was the reason why the previous generations of Emperor Shang had the confidence to suppress the Limitless Empire. But at this moment his fist was actually blocked by this foreign enemy. Being able to block a punch meant that this person was qualified to fight against sovereigns. No wonder he could defeat Huang Sha. Such a strong opponent couldn't be left alive. As he thought about it, he took a step forward. The venerable sovereign was too huge. With just one step he went from the imperial court to the imperial capital. What greeted him was a divine sword domain. The huge blade slashed down from above. Bang! With a loud bang, a wall appeared around the Dizun. The divine sword domain couldn't break through it. A long sword formed in the Dizun's hand, and it broke through the divine sword domain. Then it slashed towards Xianxia. Xianxia's expression changed. So strong? He had originally thought that this civilization would be easy to deal with. Lu Yin hadn't underestimated the Limitless Empire. After all, they had the confidence to tear through parallel universes and plunder countless resources. That was why he had brought Senior Brother Wood Carving and the others here. But now it seemed that even if they worked together, they still wouldn't be able to break through the Dizun. The white-haired old man from the research facility sighed. The Dizun was indeed terrifyingly strong. It was enough to turn the situation around. If they could research the 13 rings and use the Dizun to drive it, what would happen? The white-haired old man's eyes blazed. Hong Yen's face was ashen. She had once again witnessed the Dizun's invincible might. This civilization was strong, but they still couldn't defeat the Dizun. No, even if these people left the Limitless Empire, she had to follow. The Dizun's sword tore through the void and Xianxia hurriedly fled. In another direction, Su Wuwei attacked the Dizun with his void spirit power, but the Dizun didn't move. A bead appeared behind Su Wuwei and charged towards him from a mecha in the distance. The mecha's name was Qiu Dao and its owner was Yi. This mecha didn't have strong destructive power, but it was the best at analyzing energy in the entire Limitless Empire. It was also the best at analyzing an opponent's weaknesses. When Su Wuwei attacked the Dizun, this mecha attacked at the right time. Fortunately, Su Wuwei was able to dodge with his control of space. Even so, he couldn't participate in the battle against the Dizun. Big Sis' opponent was the Rain of Flowers mecha. Her original mecha had already fallen, so this Rain of Flowers mecha was no match for her. But if she wanted to win, she would need to spend some time. The Dizun obviously wouldn't give her that time. He raised his sword and slashed. In the underground research facility, Lu Yin's eyes grew cold. It seemed that it was time to act. He took a step forward and his body disappeared. The white-haired old man saw Lu Yin disappear. He's going to act? He's just a young man. Hong Yan's face turned ugly. He's the master of that cultivation civilization. The white-haired old man was shocked, but he didn't say anything else. Because Lu Yin had already appeared in the light screen, standing in the sky above the imperial capital. The Dizun cut the red spider lily with his sword and Big Sis hurriedly dodged. On the other side, Mu Engraving's blade swept past and slashed on the Dizun's wall light. The wall light was cut by the sequence law, but the Dizun mecha was unharmed. Emperor Shang had been waiting for Mu Engraving to act. Among these people, Mu Engraving posed the greatest threat to him. Mu Engraving's slash was a deliberate flaw. When Mu Engraving slashed, the wall light appeared again, trapping Mu Engraving's blade inside. Even if Mu Engraving could pull out his blade, it would take time unless he gave up his own blade. It was almost impossible for such an expert to give up his blade. Emperor Shang saw this point and threw a punch at Mu Engraving. Mu Engraving's eyes narrowed. He didn't do anything, but his body suddenly disappeared, just in time to avoid the Dizun's punch. Within the Dizun, Emperor Shang was confused. What's going on? How can he avoid this punch? Lu Yin saw clearly that Mu Engraving had used tracing the past. The battle was in a deadlock and only he could break it. Slowly clenching his fist, Lu Yin's eyes suddenly widened as an endless inner world appeared. Lines of power collided and time froze as he punched at the Dizun. In an instant, a warning sounded from within the Dizun, and Emperor Shang immediately locked onto Lu Yin. What is this? Before he could react, Lu Yin's punch had already broken through the wall light and landed on the Dizun's body with a loud bang. The entire void exploded, the ground shattered and the sky cracked. Dark cracks spread out in all directions. It was as if thunder had exploded above the limitless empire's capital. The Dizun retreated step by step, almost losing his footing and sinking deep into the ground with each step. Lu Yin looked at his own fist and saw that it was still ineffective. The power of his punch was about the same as Mu Engraving's void slash. Mu Engraving couldn't break through the Dizun and could only break the wall light. He looked at the Dizun in amazement. It was really tough. No wonder it was confident that it couldn't be destroyed. Lu Yin's punch had shocked too many people. Not to mention the people from the limitless empire, even Emperor Shang was stunned. Was this a punch that a human could throw? The white-haired old man and Hong Yan were also stunned. They were just ordinary people and they didn't think that a person could have such destructive power without using any weapons. Breaking the wall light with one punch? It turned out that this person was just playing a game. He had the ability to break the wall light without using any strange weapons. At this moment, even Mu Engraving was shocked by Lu Yin. He hadn't seen Lu Yin's strength after returning from the Mirage Domain. He had only heard that Lu Yin had defeated Di Qiong and suppressed the 9th grade Lotus Sovereign, but hearing and seeing were two different things. This punch had shocked Mu Engraving, Xianxia, Suwei and even Big Sis. All eyes in the capital were focused on Lu Yin and all of them were filled with disbelief. Lu Yin looked at his fist. I can't break it. I can only suppress it. He looked at the Dizun. I'll treat you like one of the 7 sky gods. But there's one thing you can't compare to. You're too clumsy. After he finished speaking, he visualized the starry sky land in his heart. At the same time, the starry sky of the limitless empire was released. Emperor Shang instinctively felt danger. This Dizun gave him a feeling that he couldn't protect himself. He stared at Lu Yin. Who are you? Why did you attack the limitless empire? Lu Yin looked at Emperor Shang. I'll tell you after I kill you. Emperor Shang gritted his teeth. What a joke. Can you break the Dizun? Lu Yin raised his hand and the land expanded rapidly. In the blink of an eye, it covered the entire capital. It was as if the land was flipping over. Suppress. The land pressed down on the Dizun. The Dizun was the tallest person in the capital. No one was taller than him. He could only withstand the land's suppression. The Dizun raised his arms and pressed against the land. With a boom, the terrifying suppression forced the Dizun to one knee. Inside, Emperor Shang's expression changed. What kind of power is this? It was as if the Dizun wasn't pressing against a piece of land, but against the entire universe. The weight was still pressing down. Your Majesty, let me do it. You controlled the mecha and attacked the land. The rain of flowers also attacked the land. But it was useless. The land couldn't be moved. Lu Yin was calm. Even Count of the Wind vomited blood, let alone them. But it was still not enough. Although the Dizun wasn't as strong as Count of the Wind, his defense was extremely strong. The wordless heavenly book appeared and golden light covered the limitless empire, bringing vitality to the land. Having vitality and not having vitality were two different concepts. When vitality appeared on the land, the Dizun's arms fell and cracks appeared. Emperor Shang's face turned red. He couldn't hold on. The Dizun couldn't hold on. How could there be such a terrifying person? When the limitless empire was in danger, it was the Dizun who turned the tide. But now even the Dizun couldn't do anything. Chapter 3144. The research facility continued to crack. The white-haired old man looked on in shock. He knew that cracks had already appeared in the Dizun, which meant that it had surpassed its limit and could not hold on any longer. Besides Emperor Shang, he understood the Dizun the best. Hong Yen clenched her fists and looked on excitedly. She had made the right bet by surrendering to these people. Your Majesty, give up, the white-haired old man said. The white-haired old man spoke, his voice transmitted into Emperor Shang's ears. Emperor Shang was filled with grief and indignation as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. Seeing the crack growing bigger and bigger, he helplessly roared, I've lost. Darkness enveloped the limitless empire, bringing despair to the capital. Lu Yin was like a god in the eyes of countless people in the limitless empire. He was a god that could make the Dizun kneel. Hearing Emperor Shang admit defeat, Lu Yin clasped his hands behind his back. Let me introduce myself. I'm Lu Yin, above heaven's path master from the primordial space. From now on, the limitless empire will listen to me. Emperor Shang's expression turned ugly, but he did not refute. In fact, they knew that they would encounter an unimaginably strong enemy one day if they kept on conquering parallel universes. But what could they do? The limitless empire needed resources, and if they did not do this, they would not have any resources. Without resources, they would not be able to maintain their internal consumption. This was a vicious cycle, and the end point was destruction. However, they were also lucky that they might not encounter a civilization that could destroy them. Even if they did, it would not be in their generation. But this day had still come, and it had come so suddenly. The land disappeared and the sky regained its brightness. Within the imperial court, Lu Yin sat on Emperor Shang's throne and looked around, feeling rather curious. He had never sat on such a chair before, one that dominated everything. Of course, he did not want to sit on it as it was too exaggerated. Below, Big Sis looked on in amusement. Su Wuwei rubbed his shoulders. This battle had been intense enough. The problem was that his opponents were not humans but mechas. He did not even know what to fight. On the other side, Emperor Shang and the rest were present. Their mechas had been repaired, and their appearance here meant that Lu Yin could kill them as he pleased. They were all ordinary people and could not resist. This included Optimus Prime's people, the white-haired old man Hong Yen, Shang Tianzong, Shang Qing and Shang Anan. Shang Anan looked at Bu Qing, who was standing beside Hong Yen. These people had found this place because of them. She then looked at Lu Yin. This person had actually managed to suppress her father's emperor all by himself. How could a human reach such heights? Shang Tianzong was unwilling to accept the fact that he had lost the throne before he even sat on it. Shang Qing was helpless as he had no choice but to fight for the throne. If he didn't fight for it, he would die even faster. If he did, he would still have the power to retaliate. Now that Lu Yin was in control of the limitless empire, Shang Qing was the most optimistic. Lu Yin swept his gaze across the crowd and finally looked at Emperor Shang. How is the sovereign? Everyone's expressions changed and they stopped sizing each other up. Emperor Shang replied, It has already been sent for maintenance. Where did its defense come from? Lu Yin was curious. This was also what Woodcut and the others were curious about. The wooden carving had a deep understanding of the defensive power of a venerable sovereign. Even a saber could not cut through it. Emperor Shang said, Yes, materials. We can turn the energy into energy rings and use it. We can also extract the most effective substances from the materials to form stronger materials. Lu Yin praised, Not bad. Although it's not very useful to people at our level, it's still very good. Continue researching, especially 13. Every ring can do it. The white-haired old man said, Master Lu, do you want to continue researching 13? Lu Ying nodded. Of course. I hope that you can research 13 to bring me more help. Otherwise, the help you can provide now is limited. Emperor Shang didn't know what Lu Ying was talking about. He thought that he was already very strong. If he didn't meet Lu Ying, could it be that this person had an even stronger opponent? Thinking of this, his heart turned cold. Indeed, parallel spacetime was too dangerous. Master Lu, may I ask what you want us to do? Shang Anan bowed respectfully and asked. Lu Ying said, help me connect some parallel spacetime. Also be my hired thugs. Shang Anan was stunned. Hired thugs. The ring could cut through the void, forming a huge passage. On the two sides of the passage, one side was the origin space and the other side was the Lost Clan's spacetime. This was the first thing Lu Ying did after returning to the Above Heaven sect. He personally saw the limitless empire connecting the parallel spacetime and forming a stable passage. From now on, the Lost Clan's parallel spacetime and the origin space did not need to tear through the void. They only needed to pass through here. Of course, it was more convenient for those who could tear through the void to reach the parallel spacetime, but there weren't many of them. The most important thing was to form a strategic advantage. Whether the Eternal Race attacked the Lost Clan or the origin space, both sides would be able to react immediately. As for the person guarding the passage, it was Optimus Prime. This was the mission of the Limitless Empire. Emperor Shang was very unwilling to let Optimus Prime help the Sixth Direction Society, but he had no choice. The entire Limitless Empire had 7 12-ring mechas, 5 Optimus Prime, Emperor Shang's Dizun, and the Empire's expedition commander Bu Wu's Bing. Now the expedition army had stopped, and Bu Wu had returned to the capital to wait for the Above Heaven sect's orders. The smarter ones in the Limitless Empire had set their sights on the Above Heaven sect. In the future, only the Above Heaven sect could make decisions. As for Hong Nian, he was still the Empire's chief minister, but his current position came from the Above Heaven sect. He was the Above Heaven sect's spy on the Limitless Empire. The Research Institute was still researching 13 Ring, and Lu Ying also hoped that they could research it and increase the number of experts. Of course, he also had the corresponding methods to control them. He would not let the Limitless Empire escape. After seeing that the origin space was connected to the Lost Clan's spacetime, Lu Ying finally relaxed. Now that he had taken this step, it was possible for the Above Heaven sect to return to its peak glory. He took a deep look at the passage and then turned towards the astral tree domain. There was something he had always wanted to do but had never done: communicate with Xianxia and Zhu Mang. These two behemoths were clearly in the astral tree domain, and when the Eternal Race attacked, they had not acted unless absolutely necessary. They were just there for show, and Lu Ying would not allow this. He wanted to see what these two behemoths wanted to do. First it was Xianxia and then Zhu Mang. Lu Ying remembered that when he and Bai Xianer had gone to Zhu Mang to deal with the Undying God, Zhu Mang had recognized his Lu bloodline and spat at him more than once. If he had not taken out the progenitor's sword, who knew how many times that fellow would have spat at him. Lu Ying did not know what grudges there were between Zhu Mang and the Lu family, but no matter how he looked at it, Xianxia should be easier to communicate with, even though it seemed rather arrogant. Not long after, Lu Ying arrived at the astral tree domain and walked straight to the sovereign realm, which was the mother tree's canopy. He saw the branches stretching far into the distance, and he saw traces of a progenitor's existence. Now that he thought about it, placing Ancestor Ku in the canopy was probably the funniest thing. He was a monster that could enter the zone of disaster without dying. But if not for that, Lu Ying would not have been able to obtain the reverse effect. When things reach an extreme, they can only move in the opposite direction. It had played a huge role in his cultivation. He crossed the sovereign realm and arrived at the top of the mother tree, where he saw Xianxia. Majestic, mighty, domineering, and arrogant, this was the divine eagle. It had stayed in this treetop for countless years. Humans had gone through many generations, but those who could survive from the era of Above Heaven were too few. The divine eagle and ancestral Mang had both survived from that era. Their age shouldn't be much younger than the primogenitor. Lu Ying appeared in front of Xianxia. Xianxia did not look sideways, looking into the distance like a statue. Lu Ying should have appeared in its line of sight, but it did not react at all, as if it did not see him. After staring at each other for a while, Lu Ying felt that he could not endure this, so he said, "You should be able to understand what I'm saying, right?" Xianxia did not react, and it continued to look forward. Lu Ying raised a brow. "I'm talking to you." Xianxia did not react. Lu Yin frowned and suddenly shouted, "Xianing." Xianing did not react. Lu Yin stared at it, but it continued to stare into the distance. Its gaze did not waver at all. Did it die? Lu Yin waved his hand tentatively, and the wind from his palms swept towards Xianing. Its feathers fluttered, but Xianing did not react at all. Lu Yin suddenly looked down and saw a figure approaching. It was Nong Yi. Nong Yi had heard the commotion and rushed over. When he saw Lu Yin, he bowed slowly. "Greetings, Pathmaster." Lu Yin grunted. "Why are you here?" Nong Yi replied, "I just happened to come to the sovereign realm and heard the commotion. Your voice is very loud." Of course, Lu Yin knew that his voice was loud and he wanted to scare Xianing, but it did not react at all. Pathmaster wants to talk to Xianing? That won't be easy. Xianing is arrogant and ignores everyone. Back then, the four-way balance's ancestor tried to communicate with it, but to no avail. He even stayed here for hundreds of years, Nong Yi reminded him. Lu Yin nodded and sized up Xianing. "Arrogant? You can't be deaf, right?" Xianying's eyes twitched, and its sharp gaze suddenly stared at Lu Yin with a chill that made one's scalp tingle. It was powerful, and it had been able to survive from the era of the Above Heaven sect until now. Even if it was not as strong as the 3 realms and 6 paths, it was not too far off. Wu Tian's martial arts had the scene of Xianying catching a fish on a ship. Anyone who was stared at by such a creature would be terrified. However, Lu Yin did not care. He was someone who had died before. Even the sole true god had not been able to kill him, let alone a mere Xianying. "It seems like you can understand me." Lu Yin looked at Xianying. Xianying stared at Lu Yin and the chill in its eyes intensified. "What's the meaning of this gaze? Are you unhappy that I said you're deaf?" Lu Yin asked. Below, Nong Yi ran away, but before he left he said, "Back then a progenitor who betrayed the humans fought in the sovereign realm. He cursed Xianying and was torn to shreds by Xianying. Pathmaster, it seems to hate being cursed at." Lu Yin was amused. "Who liked being cursed at? Let's see who the person who cursed Xianying was." There was another death, and Xianying's gaze grew even colder as it stared at Lu Yin. The terrifying pressure around them gradually increased and the light dimmed. Chapter 31:45. Lu Yin looked at the eagle. "How long have you been with the progenitor?" When it heard the words progenitor, the coldness in the eagle's eyes subsided. It then looked away from Lu Yin and looked into the distance. The progenitor created the path of cultivation for the humans and protected them. He brought about the resplendent above heaven civilization, and you and the ancestral Mang are part of this civilization. Now that the progenitor is not here, are you two not doing anything?" Lu Yin asked. The eagle looked into the distance, unperturbed. Lu Yin's head hurt. The eagle had its own thoughts and it was not human. Perhaps it only cared about the progenitor, but why had it not followed the progenitor to Immemorial City? "Why are you in the 5th mainland?" Lu Yin asked. The eagle did not respond. Lu Yin exhaled and smiled at the divine eagle. "Mixed-hair bird." The eagle suddenly glared at Lu Yin, its eyes filled with anger. Lu Yin stared at it unhappily. "I'm asking you a question. Even if you don't want to help the humans, can't you at least give me some reaction? You're only reacting after I scolded you. I think you're asking for a beating." The eagle moved, swaying its branches. The coldness in its eyes intensified, and it seemed like it was about to attack. Lu Yin also had this plan as he did not want to be ignored by this thing. Even if he had to fight, it was better than being treated like a statue. It would be best if he could beat it into submission. The divine eagle and the ancestral Mang were not weak, but they were definitely not comparable to the 3 realms, 6 paths and 7 sky gods. Otherwise, the ancestral Mang would not have been able to trap the undying god. With Lu Yin's current strength, he could definitely suppress them. At that moment, a figure walked out of the void. Lu Yin looked over. Progenitor. It was progenitor Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan's appearance caused the eagle to bristle. It bent its claws and glared at Lu Yuan. The coldness in its eyes was even more intense than when Lu Yin had scolded it. It seemed like it was about to attack. Lu Yuan had not expected Lu Yin to suddenly look for the eagle. He felt helpless. "Little Seven, why are you looking for these 2 idiots?" With a screech, the eagle raised its claws and swiped at Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan rolled his eyes. "My descendants are still here. You're embarrassing me by being so presumptuous. If I don't have face, then no one else will." The eagle's claws suddenly stopped. It was only a short distance away from Lu Yuan and Lu Yin, and then retracted them. It glared hatefully at Lu Yuan before flying away. Lu Yin was surprised. Ancestor it? Lu Yuan said helplessly, these two idiots are not weak. If it was possible, I would have asked them to take action long ago. However, due to some grudges in the past, these two idiots hold grudges and won't help us, so there's no other way. Little Seven, just ignore them and pretend they don't exist. Lu Yin was helpless. Ancestor, these two have followed the progenitor before and they're so powerful. It's difficult to pretend that they don't exist. Do you have any way for us to help the Above Heaven sect? Patriarch Lu Yuan sighed. It's all my fault. I was young and frivolous and offended them badly. There's nothing I can do about it. Ancestor, how did you offend them? Lu Yin was very curious. Back then he had been spat on by Zhu Mang and he knew that Zhu Mang definitely hated the Lu family. However, it wasn't the kind of hatred that made him want to kill the Lu family. It was more of a prank, and Lu Yin's first thought was Patriarch Lu Yuan. If there was anyone in the Lu family who could make Zhu Mang spit on them for revenge, then only Patriarch Lu Yuan had the qualifications. Patriarch Lu Tianyi, who had the highest seniority, didn't seem like someone who would provoke Zhu Mang. Patriarch Lu Yuan was a little embarrassed. Well, you just need to know that these two idiots are really stupid. There's no need to ask so much. The more he didn't say, the more curious Lu Yin became. At that moment Hongyan Mavis arrived. What's wrong? You don't have the face to tell your juniors what you did? Lu Yin looked at her. Senior, why are you here? Hongyan Mavis smiled. Greetings to my old friends Xianxia and Zhu Mang. It's been so many years since we last met. I never thought that we'd meet again. She then looked at Lu Yuan. He's the current Dao master of the Above Heaven sect, and he wants to control all battle resources. Xianxia and Zhu Mang aren't weak, and it would be a waste to not resolve their grudges and use them to their advantage. Don't you agree? Lu Yuan's expression turned ugly and he coughed. Under Lu Yin's curious gaze he reluctantly said, Actually, I don't have any grudges with these two idiots. It's just a small matter. What small matter? Lu Yin was curious. Hongyan Mavis looked at Lu Yuan in amusement. Lu Yuan glared at Hongyan Mavis and then slowly said, Xianxia, I plucked its feathers. Lu Yin raised a brow and continued to look at Lu Yuan. I used its feathers to make a fan and gave it to Master as a gift. Master was very happy and praised me for being filial. Then I almost plucked all of its feathers. Lu Yuan was embarrassed. Lu Yin blinked. He thought about how Xianxia had almost been stripped of all its feathers and then thought about Xinjun's current appearance. He didn't dare to think about it. This was a huge grudge. Hongyan Mavis snapped. Why would Master want a fan? He just thought that he would be the first person you thought of when you made a fan. He thought that you were filial, so he praised you. Who would have thought that you would be so stupid as to chase after Xianxia and pluck its feathers? During that time, Xianxia was so scared that it didn't even dare to show its face. Otherwise, it would just sit on Master's shoulder. It's a small matter, a small matter. Lu Yuan laughed to hide his embarrassment. Anything else? Tell your juniors about your glorious history, Hongyan Mavis said. Lu Yuan glared at her again. That's all. That's all. Hongyan Mavis sneered. What do you mean by teaching the ship fish to catch the Xianxia? Lu Yin was shocked. There was such a thing. The god eagle hated the warship fish the most. The warship fish was supposed to be used by the primogenitor to train the god eagle, but it was so slippery that the god eagle couldn't catch it no matter how hard it tried. The Xianxia could have caught the ship fish, but your ancestor felt that it wasn't dramatic enough, so he taught the ship fish how to dodge and how to toy with the Xianxia. Then the ship fish was enlightened and the Xianxia became stupid. From then on, the world gained another despicable fish and an eagle that couldn't catch a fish. Lu Yin was dumbfounded. Ancestor, you really know how to play. Lu Yuan smiled. It's a small matter, a small matter. Then why did the Zhu Mang spit at me? Lu Yin asked subconsciously. He felt that the ancestor might have done something worse to the Zhu Mang than to the Xianxia. Lu Yuan was furious. What? That damn snake dared to spit at you? See if I don't skin it and use it as an insult. Hongyan Mavis laughed. Spit? Ah yes, it should have spat at you. It's already polite that it didn't slap you. Did you know that your ancestor used the Zhu Mang to catch the ship fish? He let the Zhu Mang bleed, saying that it was good for the stomach. He even stuffed a sock in the Zhu Mang's mouth and used the Zhu Mang to slap the Xianxia. There are too many things that he has done. Lu Yin was stunned. No wonder the Zhu Mang spat at him after confirming that he was from the Lu family. If he was the Zhu Mang, even spitting would count. Too polite. The ancestor was too despicable. He recalled the ancestor's words. In that era, fertile earth was the most mischievous. Lu Yuan rolled his eyes. You don't have to talk. Hongyan Mavis advised Lu Yin. I think it's best if you don't provoke those two. They won't listen to you even if you beat them to death, huh? Lu Yin sighed. Ancestor, you really know how to play. Lu Yuan felt awkward. Well, little seven, there are some things that you can't blame me for. I was just bored. Lu Yin could not refute that. So he had played with them because he was bored? Now they no longer cared about humans. Lu Yuan left and so did Hongyan Mavis. Before that, the divine eagle had seen Lu Yuan and left in disgust, leaving Lu Yin alone. As he stared at the empty branches, he felt that the divine eagle and the ancestral Mang were so far away from him. This was especially true for the Zhu Mang. The ancestor had gone too far and even Lu Yin felt that he had gone too far. It was impossible for him to resolve this grudge. Lu Yin pondered for a moment and then his eyes flashed. Since he could not resolve this matter properly, he would do the opposite. After all, there was still that despicable fish. Right, the desolate god. Lu Yin thought of something and headed to Lu Tianjing. Lu Yuan had just returned to Lu Tianjing, and when he saw Lu Yin chasing after him, he could not help but feel embarrassed. This was not giving the ancestor any face at all. What, was he trying to taunt him? Yes, it was the ancestor's fault, but there was no need for a junior to chase after him. Lu Yuan was in seclusion and did not see Lu Yin. How could Lu Yin possibly taunt Lu Yuan? He wanted to ask about the desolate god, and since he could not see Lu Yuan, he could only look for Hongyan Mavis. You're saying that Big Yellow isn't dead? Hongyan Mavis was pleasantly surprised. Lu Yin nodded and his expression turned solemn. He left behind a resurrection method called the Savage Scripture. In order to revive the desolate god, the astral beast domain has been collecting human-shaped source boxes, and this type of source box. Hongyan Mavis's smile gradually disappeared as she listened to Lu Yin's words, and she seemed to be recalling something. Lu Yin did not rush her, as these words had many meanings behind them. He did not know how the fourth mainland had been destroyed, but Hongyan Mavis definitely knew. The desolate god had used the Savage Scripture to control the Source Stone technique and disguised it as using the reverse origin formation to revive humans, but in reality he had been reviving the desolate god. Since he had the time to turn astral beasts into source boxes using the Savage Scripture, it meant that he might not have used his full strength in the battle that had destroyed the fourth mainland. From Lu Yin's point of view, he might have even intentionally destroyed the fourth mainland to escape the fate of being enslaved by humans. From the desolate god's point of view, there was nothing wrong with doing this. Astral beasts were astral beasts and humans were humans. Since they could escape enslavement, the lives of humans had nothing to do with them. However, Lu Yin and Hongyan Mavis were both humans, which made things different. They had to consider the desolate god's actions. After a while, Hongyan Mavis's voice grew low. We can't revive it. Lu Yin was not surprised. Does Senior also think that the revival of the desolate god is not a good thing? Hongyan Mavis sighed. Big Yellow is Master's disciple, but his true form is an astral beast. Master took him in as a disciple because he wanted to rope in astral beasts. In that era there were too few human powerhouses. Even though Master was very powerful and could even be considered invincible, he could not destroy all the astral beasts in this space-time continuum. However, humans were the unlucky ones when it came to fighting the astral beasts because there were just too many of them. That's why Master took Big Yellow as a disciple to rope in astral beasts and provide them with invincible strength. Once humans became strong enough to establish the Above Heaven sect, they would be able to fight against the astral beasts. Chapter 3146. Hongyan Mavis had a complicated expression. Master's original intention was not to enslave the astral beasts. He only wanted humans and astral beasts to coexist peacefully. However, human nature was not something that Master could control. He tried many times to stop the humans from enslaving the astral beasts, but he still could not do so. We got along very well with Big Yellow. He was a giant astral beast, but we never ostracized him. He also often took us to play in the parallel universe when we were still cultivating. But gradually, as the humans enslaved the giant astral beasts, he distanced himself from us. He stayed in the fourth mainland and gathered the giant astral beasts there to prevent the humans from enslaving him. Hongyan Mavis looked at Lu Yin. The first continent to be destroyed was the first continent, but the reason is unknown. No one knows why it was destroyed as Master was there to oversee it. However, the first continent was destroyed and the fourth continent was destroyed shortly after. There was quite a long time between the two events, and we were all investigating the mystery behind the first continent's destruction. That's why we did not pay attention to the fourth mainland at that time. We only became vigilant after the fourth mainland was destroyed, but it was already too late. Now that I think about it, perhaps the fourth mainland's destruction was not just due to external forces, but also because of the astral beast. I'm afraid that Big Yellow might be involved as well. Lu Yin replied, that's unlikely. If it was, then it would have betrayed the humans like Guizhi. Hongyan Mavis sighed. That's true. However, the destruction of the mainland might have been due to the desolate god's indulgence. Although it did not help the Eternals, it did not stop them either. Hongyan Mavis fell silent. Big Yellow had always been simple and honest, but it had changed later on. It had become so unfamiliar and even looked at them with hatred. Although the Eternals had been invincible during that era and could suppress the various mainlands, many things had not been clear to them. They had been in seclusion for a long time and many generations of humans had passed. They could not see the entire spacetime clearly. Even Master could not do it. After getting the answer from Hongyan Mavis, Lu Yin was even more determined not to revive the desolate god. The 3 realms and 6 paths were hostile to the humans, and they were not much better than the Eternals. He would only revive the desolate god if he was confident that he could suppress everything like the above heaven. In any case, the desolate god had not openly sided with the Eternals. Senior, then why did Guizhi betray you? Lu Yin asked. The second mainland had been the last of the 4 to be destroyed. Guizhi's third mainland had been destroyed before them, so Lu Yin should know about it. Hongyan Mavis' gaze trembled. He's too stubborn. Lu Yin didn't understand. Hongyan Mavis said, the pursuit of power will lead to cultivation deviation. He is no longer himself. The great powers of the past are no longer here. There are only enemies left, the ancient gods. Lu Yin's heart sank as he thought back to what he had seen while fishing in the river of time. Were the ancient gods really traitors? De Chong was the name of an ancient god. It came from the primogenitor, and it had to be said that the primogenitor had a way of naming things. On this day, it had already been 3 months since the Limitless Empire was connected to the parallel spacetime. Above Heaven officially announced to the 6 Parties Association that they were about to hold a military edict. The so-called Imperial Martial Edict was a deterrent to the outside world after the 6 Directions Association connected their parallel spacetime. It was a deterrent to the Above Heaven sect and also to Lu Yin. Not only did it intimidate the Eternals, but it also intimidated the various parallel universes and extraterrestrial civilizations. This was Lu Yin's first step in rebuilding the resplendent heavens, the first step in the truest sense of the word. After this, the Above Heaven sect's footsteps would not stop. The ultimate goal of the Imperial Martial Edict was to target the Calamity region. The war between the humans and the Eternals was getting closer and closer. Every time Lu Yin thought of the primogenitor being whipped by the broken sequence string, he felt an indescribable pressure. He wanted to resolve all of this as soon as possible and lead the Above Heaven sect into Immemorial City to destroy the Eternals. A few days after the Above Heaven sect announced the Imperial Martial Edict, the Expedition of Calamity suddenly arrived. Since the Stargate had been destroyed, Lu Yin couldn't go to the Expedition of Calamity. He could only wait for the Expedition of Calamity to find him. The Expedition of Calamity's goal was simple: to urge the humans to go to war. They wanted to wreak havoc and unleash the power in their bodies. Destroying the universe was too boring, and the Expedition of Calamity enjoyed the battle with the Eternals to their heart's content. Of course, death was normal, but everyone in the Expedition of Calamity faced death every day. They enjoyed life while they were alive, but they could also face death calmly. What they needed now was to vent their power. When Urgi arrived at the Above Heaven sect, she exclaimed in surprise. Every extraterrestrial civilization that saw the Above Heaven sect was amazed by this colossus. The caged WIRM and the ancestral tortoise were especially huge, and the visual impact was huge. Lu Yin received Urgi in the main hall, but she wasn't used to it, so Lu Yin took her to the back of the mountain. That's more like it. That place is too formal and not suitable for unorthodox people like us. Urgi smiled. Lu Yin smiled. The expedition of calamity's attitude of facing death is admirable. What is unorthodox? No one in this universe can define the right path and the unorthodox path. The progenitor had only regulated the primordial space. Zhou Ran served tea. Erji blinked when she saw the strange tea in front of her. Master Lu, your tea is very special. Lu Yin took a sip. It looks strange, but it's delicious. Try it. Erji didn't think that Lu Yin would poison her, so there was no need for that. She drank it in a big gulp and savored the aftertaste. It's not bad. Refill. Zhou Ran happily refilled her cup. As long as someone liked to drink her tea, it didn't matter how they drank it. The sister seemed to like it very much. Lu Yin swirled the teacup and looked at it. The tea looked much better than before. Zhou Ran's tea was starting to develop in a good direction. Lu Yin and Erji chatted for a long time. Erji was very interested in the primordial space, the Six Direction Society, and the everlasting race. Lu Yin wanted to include the expedition of calamity into the above heaven sect's battle order. But how to include them and whether they were willing was another problem. After a while, before Lu Yin could speak, Erji spoke first. Let us join the above heaven sect. Lu Yin was stunned. You want to join the above heaven sect? Erji nodded and smiled brightly. That sounds interesting. Lu Yin laughed. Sure, but what about your people? Erji waved her hand. Listen to me. Lu Yin nodded. Okay. Right, it's not completely joining the above heaven sect, but only in name. If the above heaven sect has any battle missions, they can give us the expedition of calamity. Of course, you don't have to care about us during normal times. Lu Yin thought about it. How about this? I'll specially arrange a battle order with extraterrestrial civilizations. How about that? Erji nodded. I can't control that. Up to you, but it must be impressive. Lu Yin smiled. Of course. Erji drank the tea again. Light said, Little sister, refill. Zhou Ran had been waiting, eagerly looking at Erji's teacup. He was very enthusiastic. Erji exhaled deeply. Last time, in the battle with the Eternals, besides seeing the Eternals, I also saw that 9-star civilization. They were really ruthless, directly destroying a spacetime. That's different from us destroying it. They were killed in one wave. How ruthless. Don't think that our expedition of calamity is very powerful. Sometimes, when we encounter a strong enemy, we can be easily exterminated. If not for Mr. Mu, we would have been gone. Lu Yin said, Is that why you want to join the above heaven sect? Erji did not hide anything. There are too many strong people in the above heaven sect and you're still young. Who knows how long orthodox cultivators like you can live? Maybe when you go into seclusion I'll be dead. Master Lu, I don't ask for anything from the expedition of calamity. I just hope that my people can enjoy themselves while they're alive. I only ask that the above heaven sect protect my people as much as possible. As she spoke, Lu Yin realized that Erji had aged quite a bit. Their lifespan was only 300 years and they were not true cultivators. Erji was not far from the end of her life. This was also the reason why she had come to the above heaven sect. Lu Yin looked at Erji solemnly. You want to have a spectacular death feast? Erji's eyes lit up. This is what every member of the expedition of calamity wants to experience, especially when the end is near. Okay, I'll give it to you and it won't take long. Thank you. I'm the one thanking you. Right, if you die, who will the expedition of calamity be handed over to? Calamity, of course. He can already withstand power comparable to mine, so I can die in peace. Lu Yin nodded. Everyone had to experience death. He had seen people he knew die one after another, and there would be more such things in the future. If he saw too much, he would become numb. Erji left, and the above heaven sect contacted the expedition of calamity again. Unfortunately, Yi Air's spacetime and the 9-star civilization could not be contacted. He did not know how the 9-star civilization was doing. Karkoan was dead, and if the 9-star civilization could not produce a new 8-star expert, even self-preservation would be a problem. After sending Erji away, Lu Yin wanted to find Madame Nalan to solve Yi Xing's problem, but Jiang Qin and Jiang Qinyue arrived before he could. Lu Yin had been waiting for their arrival for a long time. He needed the Lightning Lord to go to the first calamity and cause a ruckus. Go to the first calamity again? Brother Lu, do you think White Cloud City is your hired thugs? Jiang Qin was dissatisfied. We came to see you with good intentions. Lu Yin shrugged. It's not just the Lightning Lord. I also have experts on my side going to the first calamity to cause a ruckus, not to fight the one true God. Jiang Qingyue looked at Lu Yin. I heard you were killed by the one true God. How did you survive? Jiang Qin was also curious. Yes, it's spread throughout the outer regions. It's said that the above heaven sex master in the origin space killed an expert of the eternal race and angered the one true God. He personally dealt with him with a sneak attack. When we heard about your death, we were sad for a while. Especially my sister. She even cried. Jiang Qingyue rebuked in a rare moment of anger. What nonsense are you talking about? She hurriedly looked at Lu Yin. Don't listen to his nonsense. I didn't cry. Jiang Qin chuckled. Yes. You didn't cry, but I did. Happy. Jiang Qingyue was furious and wanted to punch him. She really didn't cry, but who would believe Jiang Chen's words? Chapter 3147. Lu Yin was envious. You two have such a good relationship. Jiang Qingyue glared at him. Jiang Chen was completely shameless. Our relationship is even better if you're my brother-in-law. Jiang Chen, just say it if you want to die. Jiang Qingyue was truly angry. Jiang Chen hurriedly apologized and shot Lu Yin a look. Lu Yin didn't want to anger Jiang Qingyue, so he quickly changed the topic. I survived because I saw a person and went to a place. The person is the progenitor. The place is the Mirage Domain. Lu Yin didn't plan to hide anything from Jiang Qingyue and Jiang Chen, just as he didn't hide this from Elder Chan and the others. Perhaps the Eternals would hear about it, but they already knew that the progenitor was still alive in Primeval City. As for the Mirage Domain, they must have their own reasons for not entering it. Just like how the progenitor didn't send a large number of humans into the domain. To some, this wasn't a secret. Lu Yin didn't care if it was leaked or not. He was more willing to share it with Jiang Qingyue and Jiang Chen. The siblings were shocked. Progenitor? The progenitor from the origin space. Lu Yin nodded. Judging from their reactions, it seemed that they didn't know much about the Mirage Domain. That's right. He's still alive. Jiang Chen was surprised. Jiang Qingyue hissed, don't talk nonsense. Jiang Chen hurriedly apologized. I'm sorry, that's not what I meant. It's just, Lu Yin smiled. It's fine. If it wasn't for this incident, I wouldn't have known that he was still alive. Now I know. That progenitor saved you? No wonder. Apart from the progenitor, no one else can save you, Jiang Qingyue said. In everyone's heart, the progenitor's status was above everything else. The more distant and mysterious a person was, the more unfathomable they were. Even compared to the one true God, the progenitor was a level higher in many people's hearts. They didn't think about why the progenitor had disappeared or died. They only thought that once the progenitor appeared, he would definitely be able to eliminate the Eternals. This was the conventional wisdom of humans. Jiang Qingyue and the others didn't belong to the origin space, but they thought the same. What kind of place is the Mirage Domain? Jiang Chen was curious. It's not easy to explain, Lu Yin said. Just think of it as a space where time stands still forever. There's such a good place. Can we still go? Jiang Chen's eyes lit up. I'm sorry. I want to go again, but I can't unless I see the progenitor. Lu Yin sighed. Where is the progenitor? Jiang Qingyue quickly shouted in a low voice, stopping Jiang Chen from asking any more questions. Jiang Chen smiled embarrassedly. He knew that his question was a bit too much. Until now, no one from the Six Paths sect had told anyone that the ancestral patriarch was still alive. This proved that even if the ancestral patriarch was still alive, his location was still a secret. However, Lu Yin still said, Primeval City. Jiang Chen and Jiang Qingyue exchanged glances. Lu Yin's answer had touched them, and they weren't surprised that he didn't hide anything from them. Immortal City was definitely one of the places where their ancestors could be. Although they were very curious about the primogenitor, the Mirage Domain, and how Lu Yin had suddenly become so powerful, they had already asked enough questions. Let's get back to the main topic. Why did you want father to go to the first calamity region and cause a ruckus? Lu Yin's expression changed. Forgive me for not telling you this. It's not that I don't trust you, but sometimes it's hard to say. It's easy to fail. There's fate in the underworld. Fate exists in the primordial space and it can predict the future. The Eternals might have experts who can predict the future. Jiang Qingyue nodded as she could accept this explanation. Furthermore, she had asked this question not because she suspected Lu Yin of anything, but because it would be easier for her to explain things when she returned. She couldn't just go back and ask her father to cause a ruckus in the first calamity region. That would be completely unjustified. Who from the above heaven sect is going? Lu Yin said some people, including Victorious Celestial. Every time they entered the first calamity domain, he would join in the fun. In fact, he wanted to find the clues left behind by the desolate ancestor. He didn't believe that the desolate ancestor had only entered the first calamity domain and left nothing behind. Xianxia was worried. It's different now. The eternal race wasn't prepared when father entered the first calamity domain. Even so, he went with the idea that he might die. Last time, when the 6 parties and the extraterritorial civilizations fought against the eternal race, father took a risk by leading the ancient thunder locust to the first calamity domain. If we go now, I'm afraid that the eternal race will be prepared. The 3 masters and the 6 seas have already gathered. They might move out together at any time. Lu Yin said solemnly, "Don't worry. Although I don't dare to say that I know everything about the eternal race, I have seen through most of them. There won't be any danger in the first calamity domain." Xianxia raised his eyebrows. If the first calamity domain wasn't dangerous, it meant that the other calamities domain might not be the same. It also meant that Lu Yin's real target wasn't the first calamity domain. You still want to face the only true God? You might not be as lucky this time. Jiang Qingyue reminded. He had also guessed it. Lu Yin said confidently, "I'm not the same person as before." Jiang Qingyue nodded. "I can tell father that. It's up to him whether we go or not." "Of course. Then we'll go." Jiang Qingyue was straightforward. She could see that this matter was very important to Lu Yin. Jiang Qin looked back at Lu Yin before leaving. "Uncle Kong admires you very much. Brother Lu, if you have time, come to White Cloud City as a guest. Father would like to meet you." Lu Yin said seriously, "I will definitely go to White Cloud City to meet the Lightning Lord." Now, all he had to do was wait for White Cloud City's Lightning Lord's reply. During this time, Lu Yin could take care of Yi Xing's matter. He had Madame Nalan come to the Above Heaven sect. This was the first time Lu Yin had met her since his return. There were many things that were far more important than Yi Xing's matter, which was why he hadn't had time to deal with them until now. "Greetings, Headmaster." Madame Nalan bowed. Lu Yin nodded. "Sit." She sat down naturally and looked at Lu Yin with a faint smile. "Headmaster, you have time to deal with Yi Xing's matter?" Lu Yin looked at her. "Bai Ting came looking for you, right?" She smiled. "He did, but I didn't see him. I only saw Bai Lan a few times." "What did Yi Xing say?" Madame Nalan said, "Compensation." Lu Yin's expression was calm as he quietly waited for her to continue. "Bai Lan brought Bai Ting here. He wants to give all of Yi Xing's star essence, whether it's from the Genesis space or the reincarnation space-time, to you as compensation." Lu Yin smiled. "I want the star essence, but it's not enough." "I know, which is why I rejected him. Bai Lan came looking for me 4 times and I have a good relationship with her. However, her conditions are not something that you can accept." Lu Yin looked at her. "What conditions do you think I should have?" Her smile was very alluring. Yi Xing. Lu Yin raised a brow. "That won't be easy. It'll cause gossip. As long as Yi Xing is still managed by someone with the surname Bai, it'll be fine." Lu Yin met her gaze and they had a tacit understanding. After meeting with Lu Yin, Madame Nalan contacted Bai Lan and asked her to come to the Above Heaven sect. When Bai Lan received the call, she felt a rare sense of apprehension. Ever since Madame Nalan had been expelled, she had always been the one to seek her out. This was the first time that Madame Nalan had sought her out, which meant that it was not Madame Nalan who had sought her out, but rather Dao Lord Lu. Every time she met Dao Lord Lu, she felt different. The first time she had been confident enough to speak with him. Although this person was extremely powerful in the primordial space, his influence had not reached the level of the Six Directions Society. Now, however, his influence was not only limited to the Six Directions Society, but it had even spread to the outer realm. Besides the civilizations that had allied themselves with the Eternals, which civilization in the outer realm did not respect Dao Lord Lu? How many civilizations would Dao Lord Lu be interested in? Bai Lan arrived at the back mountain of the Above Heaven sect with apprehension and confusion, but she did not see Lu Yin. Instead, it was Madame Nalan. "Where's Dao Lord Lu?" Bai Lan asked. Madame Nayland smiled. Why? Do you want to see our Dao Lord? I advise you not to fall for him. Many people like him, so you'll have to queue up. Heh. Bailan was helpless, but she still relaxed. Don't joke with me. I thought that it was Dao Lord Lu who wanted to see me. Madame Nayland shook her head. I'm the one who wants to see you, but if our discussion doesn't go smoothly, then we'll have to ask the Dao Lord to step in. Bailan's expression changed slightly and she became much more serious. She walked over to Madame Nayland and sat down across from her. Tell me, what price do I have to pay to appease Dao Lord Lu? Madame Nayland replied, I won't beat around the bush with you. As for the price, one is on the surface and the other is not on the surface. What do you mean? Bailan's heart sank. She did not care about the surface price, but the more important thing was that the price was not on the surface. That price might exceed her imagination. Madame Nayland did not beat around the bush either. Tell me your compensation standard. Let me remind you that this is not a transaction. Bailan solemnly replied, I know. At present, Yixing can mobilize a total of 170 trillion star essence that will not affect his normal operations. Madame Nayland's pupils shrank. 170 trillion? If she remembered correctly, when the four-way scales had been eradicated, they had only obtained about 100 trillion star essence. That was the four-way scales, and the four families that had once ruled over the cosmic trees had only obtained about 100 trillion star essence. Although this was not all of the four-way scales resources, it was still the majority. Yixing did not rule over the six-way societies, nor did he rule over any other parallel space-time. He had actually managed to obtain so many star essence through transactions alone. 170 trillion star essence was probably equivalent to the entire four-way scales resources. I know that Yixing is very rich, but you guys are too rich. Madame Nayland could not help but sigh. She was the wealthiest widow in the Outerverse, and she had once been one of the four great trading companies. Compared to Yixing, her wealth was not even a drop in the ocean. The difference was too great. Bailan could not help but feel proud. No matter what, Yixing's master, Lady Bairong, is someone who can sit down and debate with a Grand Empyrean. She is also acquainted with White Cloud City's Thunder Lord, and she is a famous powerhouse in the Outer Realm. Even the Eternals do not dare to provoke her. With Lady Bairong overseeing things, Yixing's business has always been successful. Thank you. QZQ4418 Baidu Brothers tip. I'll give it to you, thank you. I've been too tired these past few days and I have to go on a business trip tomorrow. I'll rest for a bit and repay you when I get back. Thank you. Chapter 3148. Her smug expression quickly turned bitter. But ever since Lady Bairong went into seclusion, Yixing's business has declined. Although no one from the Six Direction Society has any ideas about us. She fell silent for a moment. The Eternals have been targeting us and they've sent a bunch of spies to deal with Yixing. Actually, I'm very curious as to why the Eternals are targeting Yixing. If not for the Eternals, we wouldn't have needed to ask for help from the Ether Sect. Bailan felt a mix of emotions. Once they had asked for help from the Ether Sect, they would no longer be free. Yixing would not be able to break free from the Ether Sect, and as Lu Yin's status and strength grew, it would become increasingly difficult for them to break free. To be honest, she even suspected that even if Lady Bairong appeared, she might not be able to break free from the Ether Sect. No matter how powerful Lady Bairong was, she was only comparable to Void Master, Wood God and other parallel spacetime masters. Lu Yin, on the other hand, had included all of these parallel spacetime masters in his Genesis space. This was the most frightening aspect. Bailan could not figure out the Eternals' goal, but Lu Yin could see it clearly. He had been listening to their conversation the entire time. Humans could not compare to the Eternals. First, they were too scattered. The Eternals could communicate and work together, but what about the humans? Many civilizations did not even know of each other's existence, which was an absolute difference in strength. If this was compared to the distribution of resources, the Eternals had gathered the strength of their entire race, while the humans were similarly scattered. The simplest example would be hiring star toads. The Eternals could hire star toads at will, and they could even raise the price at the last minute. But what about the humans? How many times could they hire star toads? The dispersion of resources would cause the difference in strength to grow larger and larger. On the other hand, Yixing seemed to be doing business on the surface. but they had indirectly integrated all of the humans' resources and constantly exchanged them for resources to earn the price difference. Every time a resource was circulated, a portion of it would flow into Yixing. Over time, Yixing's control of resources would become terrifying. Lu Yin was amazed that Yixing had suddenly taken out 170 trillion star essence, and this was just star essence. One could imagine how many resources Yixing could take out as long as he was willing to do so. Aside from these resources, Yixing definitely had more parallel spacetimes with different time flows. Yixing could hire star toads alone, which was not a good thing for the Eternals. If Yixing used all of its resources to deal with the Eternals, then the power of its resources would be terrifying. Xianxia 170 trillion star essence is all that Yixing can mobilize. Any more and will have to exchange for resources from other parallel universes, which will make it impossible for us to operate normally. Do you think that this amount of resources is enough? Bailan asked nervously. Demoness Nalan smiled faintly. Of course it's enough. Our Daoist master isn't someone who would drain the pond to catch all the fish. Kill the goose that lays the golden eggs? These words stunned Bailan. What did Daoist master Lu take Yixing for? It was actually described as killing the goose that laid the golden eggs. Madame Nalan didn't care about how these words made Bailan feel. She was going to make Bailan face reality. Otherwise, even if Bai Ting was dealt with, it would be meaningless if another Bai Ting appeared. Bailan came back to her senses, but her expression did not look too good. There's another condition. What is it? Madame Nalan's gaze turned cold. Master Yixing, change him. Bailan's expression changed greatly and she suddenly stood up. How can this be? Madame Nalan was calm. Why not? Bailan's expression turned ugly. Xiaoxue, it's true that I've offended Daoist Lu, but the price we paid is enough. Throughout history I've never compensated so many resources, and this is the greatest respect we can show Daoist Lu. However, Yixing's master is an internal matter, and it has nothing to do with Lu. Daoist Lu has nothing to do with the above heaven sect, and no one can interfere with our Yixing's internal affairs. Madame Nalan looked at Bailan. Bai Ting offended our Daoist master, and Yixing plans to use money to settle this matter? Bailan opened her mouth but no words came out. Using money to settle Lu Yin's matters was very unpleasant to the ears, and it also made her look down on others. However, didn't Daoist Lu just want money? Furthermore, this was an unimaginable amount. No matter who it was, even a Grand Empyrean would be shaken. How can this be settled with money? It's just compensation. But now your Yixing's Bai Ting has offended our Daoist master, and Yixing only plans to use money to settle this matter. If word gets out, how will our Daoist master still have the face to manage the Six Paths Association? Madame Nalan's tone was stern. Do you want outsiders to think that our Daoist master is a petty person who only cares about money? Was that not the case? Bailan's face paled. Yixing's impression of Lu Yin was that he was like this. Anything that could be solved with money was not a problem at all. This saying was applicable to the Yixing because they had money, and it was also applicable to Lu Yin because he wanted money. But why did the taste change as he spoke? Madame Nalan stood up. Yixing's compensation is not sincere, and he even wants our Daoist master to bear the infamy. You should go back. Bailan hurriedly explained, that's not what we meant. The star essence is not enough, we have other things that will definitely satisfy Daoist Lu. But who is Yixing's master? We ask the above heaven sect not to interfere. Madame Nalan looked at Bailan coldly. Go back. Bailan stared at Madame Nalan. Madame Nalan's gaze was emotionless. It was true that Madame Nalan had a good relationship with Bailan, but business was business. She had not relied on her beauty to bring the Nalan family to the position of one of the 4 great merchant associations, but she had relied on her methods. She could be ruthless, but she could also be as calm as a spring breeze. Bailan saw the chill in Madame Nalan's eyes and her heart sank. In the current universe, anyone who offended Lu Yin would be met with misfortune, and even the Grand Empyreans were no exception. Bailan had been forcefully called out by Lu Yin several times, and there were rumors that the Grand Empyreans did not dare to touch Lu Yin because Lu Yin had too many connections. Lu Yin's contributions to the Six Paths sect and humanity were too great. Whatever he did would be accepted by others because he was humanity's flag. If he wanted to destroy Yixing, he would not even need to find a reason. Countless people would help him find a reason to condemn Yixing. This was Lu Yin Daoist Lu. Bai Lan was very clear that once she left, Yi Xing would no longer have a future. She looked at Madame Naylan pleadingly. Little Snow. Madame Naylan's gaze was still cold, but it gradually melted. Bai Lan immediately knelt down. Madame Naylan hurriedly supported her. Bai Lan, this is not your problem. Bai Lan begged. Little Snow, Yi Xing cannot disappear. We don't care about Bai Ting, but this is Lord Bai Rong's blood, sweat and tears. Yi Xing cannot disappear. Little Snow, please help us, please. Madame Naylan sighed. Why don't you hear who we want to make Yi Xing's master? Bai Lan looked at Madame Naylan. Madame Naylan stared at her. You. Bai Lan smiled bitterly. She had expected this. When she had heard that the Above the Sky sect wanted to change Yi Xing's master, she had already expected this. Besides her, who else could the Above the Sky sect support? Lu Fuxue? After all, she was an outsider, so it was impossible. Daoist Lu could control the Six Paths sect and even the entire human territory, but there were some things that he could not reveal. And this was the condition that he had mentioned at the beginning, which was not on the surface. I wish to see Daoist Lu. Bai Lan's voice was low. Madame Naylan was about to refuse when Lu Yin walked out. Daoist Lu? Madame Naylan was astonished. Daoists should not have come out for such matters. Bai Lan looked at Lu Yin and hurriedly bowed. Greetings, Daoist Lu. Lu Yin clasped his hands behind his back and looked at Bai Lan. Become Yi Xing's master. I will not interfere with any of Yi Xing's matters unless the human race is in danger. You should know what this means. Bai Lan stared at Lu Yin in a daze. She had thought that Lu Yin was trying to control Yi Xing to obtain more resources, but this did not seem right. What exactly was he trying to do? In the past, Lu Yin cared about Yi Xing because he needed Yi Xing's resources. But now he had a way to obtain resources and Yi Xing had its uses. This was because Bai Lan had reminded him that he understood why the Eternals were targeting Yi Xing. The more the Eternals did not allow Yi Xing to do something, the more disadvantageous it was for them. Since that was the case, Lu Yin naturally had to do it. He had not originally planned to appear, but now that this matter had escalated to a new level, things were different. Give me 170 trillion star essence and you will be Yi Xing's master. Bai Ting, I don't want to see him again. From now on, Yi Xing can do whatever he wants and doesn't need to care about anything. I won't interfere either. What's yours will still be yours. How about it? Bai Lan was uneasy. Master Lu, you won't interfere with Yi Xing? Lu Yin smiled. Are you afraid that I'll treat Yi Xing like a money bag? Madame Naylan had a strange look on her face. That was what she had thought, and she was sure that the Dao Lord had thought the same. Why had things changed? Bai Lan pursed her lips, but she did not answer. Lu Yin frowned. Bai Ting is just a servant. This servant is two-faced, so he can't be used. If you want to make Yi Xing disappear because of him, that's fine. Bai Lan's eyes trembled. All right, I'll listen to Master Lu. I'll be Yi Xing's master. She looked at Madame Naylan. Little Snow will assist me. Otherwise, I don't know if I can do it. He was a smart person. In the rotting god dimension, Bai Lan returned with Madame Naylan behind her. Bai Ting had been waiting all this time, and when he saw Bai Lan return, he hurried forward. He saw Madame Naylan, but she did not meet him. Instead, she had returned to her own residence. A cold glint flashed through Bai Ting's eyes, but he did not dare to show it. How was it? Bai Lan replied, 170 trillion star essence. Master Lu will not pursue this matter. What? 170 trillion star essence? Are you crazy? That's the greatest resource that Yi Xing can use. Bai Ting roared. Bai Lan looked at him coldly. What other ideas do you have? Bai Ting glared at Bai Lan and clenched his fists. You're too greedy. Do you know how many years we've worked for nothing if we use up these resources? Or use your life to exchange for these resources? Bai Lan taunted. Bai Ting took a deep breath and his eyes flashed with hatred. Bai Lan saw Bai Ting's sinister gaze. Apologize to Little Snow. Bai Ting was furious. You want me to apologize? Bai Lan replied, the resources are just a punishment for disrespecting Master Lu. You fired Little Snow and she didn't do anything wrong. Shouldn't she apologize? Bai Ting suppressed his anger. Aren't those resources enough? Do you want the Six Directions Society to think that Master Lu is greedy for money and can be settled with money? Bai Lan asked. Was that not the case? Bai Ting gritted his teeth. Chapter 3149. In the past, Bai Lan would have advised him against it, but there was no need to do so now. There was no need to argue with a dead person. Bidding suppressed his anger and walked towards Madame Nalin's residence. He saw her. Xiao Shui, it's my fault. I didn't investigate properly and misunderstood you. I apologize now. Although Bidding was furious, he did not show it and apologized sincerely. Madame Nalin looked at him strangely. You're welcome. We're on the same side. Bidding was stunned. Madame Nalin had never spoken to him like this before. Come in and have a seat. Madame Nalin stepped aside. Bai Ting didn't understand. He glanced at Madame Nalin again, his eyes burning with desire. This woman was extremely alluring. He had been attracted to her since the first day he entered Yixing. But because of his status he could only suppress his desire. What was going on today? He entered Madame Nalin's residence. Madame Nalin placed a hand on Bidding's shoulder. Her fragrance wafted over, but Bidding did not dare to move. He wondered if this was a trap. The Above Heaven sect was using this woman to tempt him so that they could obtain more resources. Yes, that must be it. He hurriedly got up and left. Suddenly he felt a sharp pain. His body went numb and he could not move. The spatial decay god appeared and tried to isolate Bidding. However, the spatial decay god did not even last for a moment before it was shattered. Bidding looked at her in shock. Xiao Shui, you? Madame Nalin's expression changed. I'm not Xiao Shui. You can call me Ag. Yixing's resources arrived quickly. Pathmaster, I'll go to Yixing now. Madame Nalin bowed. Lu Yin said, send back any information regarding the Eternal's plan to deal with Yixing. It's very important. I understand. Madame Nalin bowed again and left. After dealing with Yixing, Lu Yin waited for news from White Cloud City. The Thunder Lord was focused on dealing with the primordial thunder locust. Jiang Qinyue and the others might not be able to speak to him so easily. During this time, Lu Yin also went to the Three Sovereigns universe to look for Luo Shan, but he could not find him. Luo Shan was also on that list. He did not trust anyone. No one could prove that he had betrayed the humans and that he was a spy. However, he did not believe that Lu Yin would trust him, so he simply disappeared. As for Mr. Daheng, he was also in the endless battlefield. This person had the Star Toad as his backing. Other than Luo Shan and himself, no one else knew about this. He had nothing to fear. He believed that Luo Shan wouldn't tell anyone, and that Luo Shan didn't know that he knew about this matter. He might be able to find the nest of the Star Toad through him. Lu Yin had always been brooding over the Star Toad, as the Eternals often employed Star Toads to annoy the humans. Since the Eternals had hired Star Toads, it meant that the Eternals did not have enough powerhouses. As long as he could get rid of the Star Toads, then he would have an even greater advantage against the Eternals. After a period of time, there was still no news from White Cloud City. Instead, there was a piece of bad news. The 5 spirit clans and the Tri-Moon Alliance were ambushed by the Eternals and suffered heavy casualties. When Lu Yin heard the bad news, he hurried to the Ice Spirit Dimension. Civilizations like the 5 spirit races and the 3 Moon Alliance that could fight against the Eternal race had connections with the primordial space. The primordial space could react immediately if they were attacked. Unfortunately, it was too late. The Eternals had only attacked once, and this time the 3 Moons Alliance had lost a moon god. 3 of the 5 spirit tribes had died as well: Fire Lord, Thunder Lord, and Wood Lord. This is a nightmare. The 6 Direction Alliance had been caught off guard, and Lu Yin's good mood was gone. When he came to the Ice Spirit Dimension, he was worried about Bing Xian the most. Fortunately, she was fine and the Ice Lord was still alive. Lu Yin saw the Ice Lord. What happened? The Ice Lord said bitterly, I was poisoned. Poisoned? Lu Yin hadn't expected this. He didn't understand either. The 5 spirit clans and the 3 Moon Alliance had 8 sequence law realm experts, but they had suffered heavy casualties when the Eternals attacked. Lu Yin guessed that even if the Eternals had used the divine commandment to focus their attacks on one point, it shouldn't have been the 5 spirit clans. It should have been the 9-star civilization Yixing and the abandoned ones. After all, the 5 spirit clans had 5 sequence law realm experts, and too many of them would cause the Eternals to scatter and delay. If he had known that the Eternals had the ability to instantly deal with the 5 spirit clans and the 3 Moon Alliance, he would have thought of a way to deal with them. Yixing and the 9-star civilization had no way to deal with them. The Ice Lord panted. Have you heard of the deceit poison? Lu Yin's gaze turned cold. He had forgotten about it. The Eternals had been researching the poison of time and the poison of life, which were two terrifying poisons. Lu Yin had been vigilant in the past, but as time passed and his cultivation increased, he no longer considered using poisons. He hadn't expected the Eternals to use poison to heavily injure the 5 spirit clans and the 3 Moon Alliance. No matter how he looked at it, the deceit poison was the same as the poison of life and the poison of time. They had all been researched by the Eternals. The deceit poison? We didn't expect such a poison to exist. The 5 spirit clans are not humans, but we're still poisoned. Once you're poisoned, your strength and even your life force will fade. It's difficult to recover, just like the woman sealed in the ice heart. Only an extremely powerful expert can heal her, or even a progenitor can't protect herself. The moment I realized I was poisoned, I used the extreme ice stone you gave me to seal myself and used the ice heart to strengthen my particles. Otherwise, I would have died under the Eternals' attack. I don't know how Hutu survived, but the other 3 were killed by the Eternals after being poisoned. The Ice Lord was weak. Lu Yin's eyes narrowed. The loss of strength and life force was even more vicious than the poison of life. How were you poisoned? The Ice Lord shook her head. I don't know. Do you know the serial number of this deceit poison? Lu Yin asked. The Ice Lord was confused. Does this poison have a serial number? Lu Yin pondered this. Of course it had a serial number. The higher the serial number, the more powerful it was. He had first learned about the poison of life after Ming Zhaoshu's death. The poison of time and the poison of life both had serial numbers. If the Ice Lord and the others had been poisoned with a serial number of 0, then it would be fine. It meant that the Eternals had reached the peak of their deceit poison and couldn't directly kill a sequence law powerhouse. If the serial number wasn't 0, then it would be troublesome. The poison of time had crippled the Genesis space and the 3 sovereign spacetime continuum, but that had been used on a large scale. The poison of life had yet to be used on such a large scale. This reminded Lu Yin that if these poisons weren't dealt with, then the human race could face disaster at any time. Should he rejoice? The deaths of 4 sequence law powerhouses had forced the Eternals to reveal their trump card. Lu Yin sighed and looked at Bing Exin. Not long after, Jiang Qingyue arrived at the Ice Spirit spacetime. She had rushed over as soon as White Cloud City received the news. The Ice Lord had been poisoned by the deceit poison, and his life force and energy were constantly draining away. Either he had to detoxify the poison or he could only rely on the sequence law to freeze himself. Hozhu, the Moon Immortal, and the Moon Ghost were probably the same. One could imagine how powerful the deceit poison was. The most important thing right now was to find the antidote. Otherwise, if 4 sequence law powerhouses died, another 4 would be crippled or even killed. Now that the 5 spirit clans and White Cloud City were connected, there was no need to worry about the Eternals attacking them again. Even if the Eternals had the ability to attack the 5 spirit clans again, they wouldn't be able to deal with them and White Cloud City in the shortest amount of time. The most important thing right now was to deal with the deceit poison, as well as the poison of time and the poison of life. Lu Yin immediately sent the 6 Direction Association's best healers to the Above Sky sect to check on the Ice Lord and the others. However, the most troublesome thing was that the Ice Lord and the others weren't humans, so the human cultivators couldn't treat them. Helpless, Lu Yin hurriedly sent the 6 Direction Association to find the surviving Moon Immortal and Moon Ghost. These 2 women had escaped death, but they were definitely not in good condition. Otherwise they would have appeared. They might not be far from death. A few days later, news came from the Outlands that the Moon Immortal and Moon Ghost were being hunted down by the Eternals. Fortunately, Lu Yin sent the 6 Direction Association to find them in time, and they were rescued. The one who saved them was a Venerable Lotus. The Venerable Lotus was more familiar with the Outlands. This could be considered a meritorious service. When the Moon Immortal and Moon Ghost arrived at the Above Sky sect, Lu Yin almost couldn't recognize them. They were too weak and their faces were pale. However, they weren't in a hurry to recover. Their injuries didn't threaten their lives. The real threat was the deceit poison. It was a slow torture that brought them closer and closer to death. The weakening of their strength was a form of approaching death, and it was torture for them. Lu Yin didn't hold back. He had all the cultivators skilled in healing check their blood for the deceit poison. After a round of inspection, no one had a clue. They couldn't figure out what the deceit poison was. Master Qing Chao reminded Lu Yin, if you want to treat the deceit poison, you must first know what it is. You said that the time poison can make time flow faster or slower for people in a space-time, making it difficult for them to cultivate. The life poison causes one's life to flow away irreversibly. Then, is the deceit poison more important than the loss of one's strength or life? Or is there some other hidden danger? Lu Yin thought about it and agreed. How could he treat the deceit poison if he didn't know what it was? Not long after, Xianxia arrived with a gloomy expression. Father told me to tell you that we'll meet in the first domain of calamity. We must avenge the 5 spirit tribes. Lu Yin said, please wait, Lightning Lord. If we don't figure out what this deceit poison is, it'll be bad if we kill our way into the first domain of calamity. Is this poison that powerful? Even Father can be affected? Jiangqin didn't believe it. Lu Yin was solemn. The Ice Master and the others are experts of the sequence laws. I don't believe that the Lightning Lord has surpassed them. Jiangqin nodded. You're right. All right, I'll go back and tell Father to wait. We can't fall into the Eternal's trap. Right, how long will it take? We can't let this drag on indefinitely. Lu Yin thought for a moment. I wanted to kill my way into the first domain of calamity anyway. I have my own plans. It has nothing to do with your plans now. The Eternals killed the Flame Lord and the others. Father won't let this matter rest. Jiangqin gritted his teeth, a vicious glint in his eyes. Chapter 3150. This was Lu Yin's first time seeing Jiangqin like this. White Cloud City had a very good relationship with the 5 spirit races. That was why the Eternal race had the confidence to provoke the conflict between the 5 spirit races and the Trimoon Alliance. Now, the Eternals no longer cared about anything else because of the divine injunction. They only wanted to destroy the top human experts. White Cloud City could not charge into the domain of disaster without any preparation. It would be easy for them to fall into the trap. Lu Yin believed that the Eternals would be prepared. The divine commandment was not a war, but a war that would wipe out an entire era. It might end in a few days or it might not even end in tens of thousands of years. In the era of the above heaven, the destruction of the 4 continents was not a short period of time. There was a long period of time between the destruction of each continent. The destruction of the 4 continents was within the scope of the first divine commandment. A very long time had passed between the above heaven sect and progenitor Chen's generation in the 9 mountains and 8 seas, and human history had been left blank for a period of time. It was not that there were no records of this era as the Lu family did. However, there was no need to do so as during that period of time aside from the Daoist sect Shenwu Plain and the frigid Immortal sect which Lu Yin was familiar with, everyone else had been destroyed and not a single one had survived. Those people were worthy of remembrance, but there was nothing left to pass on. That was the second battle of the divine commandment. This was the 3rd time. The everlasting race had always held the initiative. Lu Yin believed that the everlasting race had a greater advantage than the humans, regardless of whether it was starting the war or winning every battle. However, humans had already learned their lesson twice and they could no longer be passive. Lu Yin had already thought of a way to deal with illusory poison, and it was through his die's enhance. His die rolled 6 pips. After devouring the consciousness of the person in the game of 1,000 faces, Lu Yin had discovered that there was a barrier in that dark space. This barrier should correspond to a parallel space-time, and Lu Yin's consciousness should not have been able to break through it. However, things were different now as he had devoured Ruin's consciousness. Even though it would take a long time for him to fully utilize the consciousness, it should be enough for him to break through a portion of the barrier. Using his godly power to roll the die, his consciousness had broken through the barrier and merged with it. This was Lu Yin's method. Based on Lu Yin's own strength, if the ball of light's radiance was stronger than his, then it would definitely be at the level of the 3 powerhouses, 6 boundless or 7 sky gods. It was very likely that such a powerhouse would understand the illusory poison. Before he had fused with Ruin's body, he hadn't checked his memories. Even if he had, he might not have been able to find the illusory poison. His memories were simply too vast. Now that he was specifically looking for the illusory poison, he should be able to see it even if it had only been a short time since it had merged with the 7 gods' celestial body. When he thought of this, Lu Yin returned to the back mountain of the Above the Sky sect and instructed that no one was to disturb him. He raised his hand and his die appeared. He slowly extracted his godly power from his body and allowed it to take on a form visible to the naked eye that resembled star essence formed from star energy. This way he could rely on his godly power to roll the die. Flicking his finger, the die spun slowly. 4 points time stop space. Lu Yin did not want to waste any time in this space, so he increased his time to a year and began to cultivate. His main focus was his consciousness as he needed to use it right now. The time he had spent in the Mirage realm was too short. If he had stayed here for a longer period of time, he would have been able to completely control his consciousness. The scene in front of him changed and he appeared in the real world. He rolled his die once more, but this time it was 3 pips. He was rich, quite rich, but he hadn't thought of anything to upgrade himself with. Hold on, he suddenly remembered something. The 7-star immemorial card, Eternal Darkness. Could this be upgraded? This card had been created by the Lost Clan, and since it had been created, it meant that it could be upgraded. If it was upgraded, would Eternal Darkness reach the level of an ancient card? When he thought of this, Lu Yin decided to give it a try. He placed the Eternal Darkness card on the upper screen and then began to toss in star essence. He had tried it once before, but he had not been able to determine whether or not the card could be upgraded. Even if it could be, the amount of star essence required to upgrade it would be far too great. The amount of star essence he had at the time was not even enough to make the card fall behind, so he had thought that it was impossible to upgrade it. But now he was trying again. As the star essence was tossed out, the Eternal Darkness card moved. Lu Yin was excited as it really could be upgraded. This meant that it could be upgraded from an immemorial card to an ancient card. Lu Yin's breathing quickened. According to Elder Shan Gu, ancient cards corresponded to the primordial realm, which meant that he might have a way to deal with a primordial realm expert. He instinctively wanted to upgrade Eternal Darkness, but he forcefully suppressed that impulse. He could not rush it. So what if he upgraded it? Even if he had an ancient card, what could he do against a primordial realm expert? That was what his rationality told him, but as he looked at the Eternal Darkness card before him, he could not suppress his desire to upgrade it. He regretted not cultivating Eternal Darkness earlier. Eternal Darkness had its own traps, and only those who truly controlled it could activate them. Although he had been the master of Eternal Darkness all this time, he had never truly tried to control this card. He had always felt that only a corner of the ancient card belonged to him, and that this card was only a tool that Elder Shan Gu had given him to conceal himself. It did not truly belong to him. Only now did Lu Yin realize that he had overlooked this Eternal Darkness card. Eternal Darkness had always been a tool for concealing the laws of the sequence realm or a tool for sneak attacks. It was not a true method to deal with enemies, which was Lu Yin's mistake. However, it would not be easy for him to control Eternal Darkness. The Lost Clan's battle style did not suit him at all. They relied on traps to drag their enemies into the card and then used the traps within the card to kill their enemies. Lu Yin, on the other hand, was more adept at fighting on his own. If he really encountered an opponent that forced him to use sneak attacks, a single card would not be able to trap them and they would definitely be able to escape. Even if he upgraded Eternal Darkness to the primordial realm, would he be able to trap a primordial realm expert and prevent them from escaping? That was clearly impossible, as Lu Yin had not reached the primordial realm, so he would not be able to trap them. It might be possible to trap an expert who had not reached the primordial realm. Right? Lu Yin clenched his fists. His current opponents were not even in the primordial realm, so how could they be considered primordial realm experts? They were currently at the 7 sky gods, the 3 pillars and the 6 boundless realms. When he thought of this, he decided to upgrade. The decision to upgrade was one thing, but the price was another. Lu Yin silently calculated and his teeth ached. If he really wanted to upgrade Eternal Darkness to the next level, the amount of star essence he would need would be equivalent to half of his wealth. It should be known that Lu Yin currently had 226 trillion star essence, which was more than what Lu Tianjing had at his peak. In the entire 6 Direction Society, only Yi Xing could compare to him. Half of Lu Yin's wealth was equivalent to more than 1 trillion star essence, which was equivalent to the majority of the 4 direction scales' wealth. None of the 4 cardinal scales could take out that much money on their own. If this money was scattered throughout the Cosmic Tree Society, it would be enough to incite a war and drive countless people crazy. Right now he could only use it to upgrade Eternal Darkness. It was no wonder why the star essence he had previously used had not even been enough to make the card move. Lu Yin's heart ached, as Yi Xing was the last of the big names, and it was impossible to find another big name like Yi Xing. This was the largest amount of resources he had obtained from a single organization, and using it all up in such a short period of time made his heart ache. But there was nothing he could do. Lu Yin gritted his teeth and his eyes turned red as he stared at the screen. He frantically smashed down with star essence, and the Eternal Darkness card slowly fell to the ground. When the Eternal Darkness card landed on the lower screen, Lu Yin sighed, his back drenched in sweat. In the past, the most extravagant expenditure he had ever used was to repair the progenitor's sword, which had only cost him 12 trillion star essence. Lu Yin looked at the Eternal Darkness card. I hope you're not letting me down. He then picked up the card. The moment the card was taken out of the screen, the primordial space did not change, but the Lost Clan's spacetime that was connected to the primordial space underwent a huge change. All of the exposed cards began to tremble uncontrollably. Elder Dangu was shocked. What was going on? He immediately took out his 7-star ancient card, Heavenly King, only to discover that it was trembling. The other Lost Clan members did not understand this situation, but Dangu knew that it was a phenomenon caused by an ancient card. Where was the ancient card? He looked up at the starry sky, but there was nothing there. Could it be that an ancient card had silently descended into this spacetime? Where had it come from? Who had brought it here? Had someone from his hometown come? Danjing arrived. Elder are cards. Elder Dangu raised a hand to stop Danjing from speaking. I know. Keep this a secret. Don't tell anyone else. Danjing nodded and looked at Elder Dangu. The elder's expression was unprecedentedly solemn, but there was also a trace of imperceptible excitement. The Lost Clan's abnormality had not been detected by the primordial space. The two spacetimes had just connected and they were not familiar with each other yet. The Lost Clan was xenophobic and it would take a long time for them to get familiar with each other. Lu Yin did not know that the upgrade of Eternal Darkness had shaken the entire Lost Clan. When he entered Eternal Darkness, he discovered that it was not much different from before. It was still as dark as before, so dark that it was difficult to breathe. This darkness was much deeper than Mo Shang's dark sequence laws, and it was even deeper than the Void Realm. Lu Yin believed that if old freak Mo entered Eternal Darkness again, his dark sequence laws would be devoured. However, this alone was not very useful to Lu Yin. He needed to truly understand Eternal Darkness or the upgrade would be a waste. Furthermore, if Eternal Darkness could be upgraded, then the other cards of the Lost Clan would naturally be able to as well. Elder Dangu's Heavenly King card could do the same, and the cost would not be any less than Eternal Darkness's. Once it was upgraded, it would mean that Elder Dangu could rely on this card to fight against a Primordial Realm expert. This was undoubtedly good news, but whether Lu Yin would upgrade the card or not was another question. The Lost Clan was xenophobic and Elder Dangu had experienced despair before. Although Lu Yin had convinced him to join the Above Heaven sect to fight against the Eternals, Lu Yin was not sure how much he would do for the humans of this spacetime. Helping Elder Dangu upgrade the card and expending all of his own resources, or not helping Elder Dangu upgrade the card and keeping these resources for his own use was a choice. Lu Yin thought about it for a while and then decided to put this matter aside for now since he still needed to use possession. Fusing with the body of 7 sky gods would definitely consume a lot of resources. Even if he wanted to help Elder Dangu upgrade the card, he would need to leave behind enough star essence for himself. Chapter 3151. The ancient card could greatly increase Great Elder Dangu's strength, but that was all it could do. On the other hand, 6 Enhance could do something completely different, and the ancient card couldn't compare to it. Lu Yin put away the Eternal Darkness card and continued to roll the die. 6 Enhance. Lu Yin smiled as he had thought that he wouldn't be able to roll it this time. His consciousness appeared in the dark space and he heaved a sigh of relief. Appearing here meant that he could fuse his divine power into the body of someone who cultivated it. The next step was to find the glowing orb. There was one in the distance that was very dim and it was obviously not what Lu Yin was looking for. There were quite a few people who were qualified to cultivate godly power and had cultivated it well. For example, the spies that had been hidden in the Above Heaven sect had been able to destroy star energy because they could mobilize godly power. They might not have been able to successfully cultivate godly power, but they could mobilize it, which was another method. His consciousness continued to travel and soon he saw a bright orb that was not Chongliang. It was blinding and Lu Yin was excited. It was definitely at the level of the 3 powers and 6 limitless, or else it wouldn't be so bright. This brightness meant that its strength surpassed his own. As expected, there was a barrier in front of him, which meant that the orb was in a different spacetime from the Genesis space. Lu Yin was slightly disappointed, as he had hoped to fuse into the body of the mysterious Wu Xian and see who this person was. His consciousness rushed towards the orb and slammed into the barrier. His consciousness and the barrier continued to cancel each other out until finally, his consciousness broke through the barrier and headed towards the orb. As he approached and fused with it, memories flooded his mind and a pair of scarlet eyes stared at him. Lu Yin's scalp went numb as he had been discovered. At the same time, he knew who he was fusing with. Gu Yizhi. Turbid treasure? So that's how it is. No wonder you were able to reach this height. I should have known. A voice sounded out, and Lu Yin hurriedly left the ancient god and returned to the dark space. This was the first time that 6 enhance had been discovered, and that voice belonged to the one true god. He had discovered Lu Yin's secret. You want to leave after coming here? The dark space trembled, and Lu Yin's consciousness saw a large square seal appear in the blink of an eye, crashing down on his consciousness with a loud bang. His consciousness returned to his body and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He half knelt on the ground as blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, and his pupils dilated and focused. It took him a while to recover. His head was still dizzy and he couldn't see anything clearly. The most serious thing was that the consciousness planet in his heart had cracked. Lu Yin had seen that seal before, and it was the foundation of the Eternal Kingdom. It was also the foundation through which the 6 Directions Society could leave behind their auras when they traveled to other parallel universes. A base would not be able to injure one's consciousness in a dark space, so it was obvious that it was not the foundation but something else. The die had always been Lu Yin's trump card. 1 point allowed him to steal external objects, 2 points allowed him to disintegrate, 3 points allowed him to upgrade, 4 points allowed him to stop time, 5 points allowed him to borrow innate gifts, and 6 points allowed him to fuse with someone else's body. Although most of these abilities had been seen through by others, and many had guessed that he had these abilities, they had never truly been able to decipher them. This was especially true for 6 pointers, which he had never expected to be solved by anyone else. When he was in the 3rd zone of disaster, he had fused his die with 6 pips into Di Xia and Muji's bodies. He had been so close to Di Qiong and he had never thought that he would be discovered. But now he was discovered by the only true god, who even gave him a blow through that incomparably mysterious dark space. Next. This made Lu Yin feel uneasy as his greatest secret had been discovered. He had a complicated look in his eyes. He should have known that this day would come. He had been so used to everything going smoothly that he had forgotten that the die might not be the most mysterious thing in the universe. The only true god seemed to have said 2 words, turbid treasure. Was the die a turbid treasure? What exactly was a turbid treasure? He had to find a time to ask. This time he had fused with the ancient god's body, but he had been discovered by the only true god. This was because the true god had left behind a method to control the ancient god's body. This was not something that Lu Yin had learned from his memories, but rather from the moment he had fused with the ancient god's body. The ancient god had betrayed him for another reason. The moment he had fused with the ancient god's body, although it had only been a short time, Lu Yin had still seen memories of the illusory poison. He was glad that he had thought of the illusory poison the moment he had fused with the ancient god's body. Otherwise he would not have been able to see it. The so-called illusory poison was not something that the Eternals had researched. Instead, it came from the saliva of a creature known as the illusory. The illusory was a white monster that slept in the void and fed on energy. Energy was the source of life, and once a creature lost its energy, it could not do anything. Even if food was placed right in front of it, it would not be able to eat it. It would lose its cultivation, and that was the loss of energy. The illusory's favorite food was energy. The illusory poison was the saliva that it had left behind when it was asleep. Lu Yin had seen the illusory before. He had used his limitless inner world to fish out the river of time, and he had seen a monster that looked like a whale. When it flipped over, it could create a world of nothingness. That was the illusory. The illusory devoured energy, and it was not an exaggeration to call it shocking. Energy could be converted into power, and the illusory strength had shocked Lu Yin back then. Lu Yin had never thought that the Eternals would rear this monster and turn it into the creator of the illusory poison. Because the time he had fused with the ancient god's body had been too short, Lu Yin had not been able to find the illusory's location through the ancient god's memories. He had only seen the origins of the illusory poison and the antidote. It was laughable that the antidote to the illusory poison was the poison of time. The illusory was born and raised by the heavens, and it had no natural enemies. Due to its enormous energy and size, no creature in the universe could kill it. No one even dared to approach it, as it would devour their energy. However, there was no such thing as an invincible creature in the universe. The illusory feared time the most, and the passage of time was what it feared the most. That was why it slept all year round, not wanting to feel the passage of time. Everything in the illusory could be dissolved by time. Of course, this was referring to the time that had obviously changed, not the normal time. Lu Yin guessed that the Eternal's ability to trap the illusory was related to the poison of time. He knew the antidote, but the poison of time was difficult to find. This was not some kind of power but rather time itself. Lu Yin's first thought was that the mist in the Mirage domain could definitely resolve the illusory poison, but he could not enter the domain. The only thing that he did not have to worry about was the illusory poison. The Eternals were also gone. It was not easy to obtain saliva from the illusory poison, as it would easily devour one's energy. Even the 7 sky gods were wary of this. After so many years, the Eternals had not obtained much illusory poison. The 5 spirit tribes and the Trimoon's alliance had used it all up. A total of 8 sequence laws powerhouses had attacked it once. How could the illusory poison be left? It was time to attack the first domain of disaster. Lu Yin touched his chest. His consciousness had been injured, but his body was unharmed. The plan could still continue, and he could not wait. The longer he waited, the more the Eternals would have. In the lost dimension, Elder Xiangu stood in the sky, holding the Emperor card. There was no movement. Had someone put it away? How did the ancient card appear in the world? Elder Xiangu looked into the distance. Someone was approaching. Soon Lu Yin arrived. "Senior, why are you here?" Elder Xiangu replied, "I came out to take a look. The 2 dimensions are connected, and there must be a place for them to merge." Lu Yin smiled. "Of course, but don't worry. If the lost dimension does not wish to interact with the outside world, that's fine. The main purpose of connecting dimensions is to facilitate mutual support and guard against the Eternals." "Why have you come here, Master Lu?" Elder Xiangu asked. Seeing Lu Yin reminded him of a corner of the card that had appeared before. However, it could not be that card. Otherwise, the movement would not have been so small. The appearance of that card would cause the entire universe to tremble. Lu Yin was helpless. "I'm ashamed to say this. All this time I didn't understand the Eternal Darkness card, and I'm not used to fighting with it. Thus, I wanted to ask Elder Xiangu about the Eternal Darkness card." Eternal Darkness had been upgraded to the level of an ancient card, so Lu Yin naturally wanted to use it against the enemy. He had to understand it clearly before the battle. Of course, he did not intend to take out the Eternal Darkness card to prevent Elder Xiangu from seeing that he had upgraded it. He could not explain it. Elder Xiangu did not think much of it. Eternal Darkness has existed in the Lost Dimension for a very long time. It is on the same level as my Emperor card. They are both 7-star Archean cards, and there is only one method in it. It is called the Dark Hall. The Dark Hall. Lu Yin was curious. Elder Xiangu looked at Lu Yin. "You haven't asked me this question. I thought you were not interested in the card." Lu Yin said apologetically, "It's just that there are too many different combat skills. Sometimes I don't know which one to practice. I've embarrassed myself in front of you." Elder Xiangu looked at Lu Yin with a faint smile. "Master Lu paid attention to the Lost Dimension because you had a talk with me last time, right?" Lu Yin was stunned. He had not thought of it that way. Before this, Master Lu only thought that the Lost Dimension was an ordinary civilization that could not be compared to the origin space. At most, it was comparable to the reincarnation space-time, and this was only because of the ancient cards. But after the last talk, Master Lu also knew about the glory of the Lost Dimension, so you paid attention to Eternal Darkness. Elder Xiangu continued. Lu Yin had not thought of it that way, but since Elder Xiangu said so, it was true. The Lost Dimension did not belong to this universe. It had given birth to unimaginable powerhouses, which meant that its glory was not inferior to the above heaven sect. Therefore, it was reasonable for him to pay attention to Eternal Darkness from then on. Lu Yin smiled bitterly. I can't hide anything from you, Elder Shangu. You are right. I have always thought that the human body is the foundation of cultivation, but I did not expect that a card could give birth to such a glorious civilization. Elder Shangu sighed. A senior once said that in the universe, everything that is born has its own unique way of development. No species is invincible and no species cannot develop. Even a blade of grass or a piece of stone has its own way of development. It just depends on whether you can find it. Chapter 3152. Lu Yin recalled that the endless battlefield had civilizations that fought with stones on their backs. There was even more grass, and Hongyan Mavis had used a stalk of grass to block the corrosive mist of time. Grand Elder Shangu was right. Lu Yin bowed solemnly. I've learned my lesson. That's right. Every civilization has its own unique development. I should not be limited. Great Elder Shangu couldn't help but laugh. I didn't say those words. They were said by a senior. Unfortunately, that senior also died. He died very miserably. In the end, nothing can defeat that existence. Lu Yin hurriedly said, Grand Elder, my master said that everything is preordained by the heavens. There is no limit to the universe. That existence you speak of should not exist. I told you this last time. Grand Elder Shangu sighed deeply. I'm sorry, Master Lu. I lost my composure. Grand Elder Shangu would lose his composure every time that existence was mentioned. Clearly, that existence had become his inner demon long ago. This made Lu Yin no longer want to help him upgrade the Heavenly King card. It was not that he looked down on Grand Elder Shangu, but the upgrade of a card needed to be accompanied by its user. Grand Elder Shangu's inner demon meant that he could not reach the primordial realm. Even if he used a primordial realm card, he would only be able to face the 7 sky gods at most. He would only be unlucky if he encountered a true primordial realm expert. Upgrading the card was not helping him but harming him. My Lost Clan has a total of 3 7-star archaic cards. They are the Heavenly King, Eternal Darkness, and Aurora. Among them, Aurora does not have a master. The master of the Heavenly King is me. You are now the master of Eternal Darkness. The Heavenly King is tyrannical and Eternal Darkness is sinister. Eternal Darkness is a method of dealing with enemies. The traps inside should be created by you, and the traps inside the card are called the Dark Hall. You use darkness to imprison and burn enemies. Grand Elder Shangu told Lu Yin his understanding of Eternal Darkness. Although he had never used Eternal Darkness before, there were many people in the history of the Lost Clan who had once been the master of Eternal Darkness. Lu Yin gradually understood Eternal Darkness through Grand Elder Shangu's explanation. He rubbed his cosmic ring. He did not know what the effects of using Eternal Darkness against enemies would be. His strength had already changed, but he had not broken through to the progenitor realm. As for Eternal Darkness, while it was said that it corresponded to the primordial realm, it was impossible for him to truly fight against a primordial realm expert. However, using it to kill 1 or 2 Sanqing and Liuhao shouldn't be a problem. After he finished speaking, Great Elder Dangu allowed Lu Yin to ponder. He had actually been waiting for Lu Yin to come to the Lost Clan to ask him how to use Eternal Darkness, but Lu Yin had not come. With the card in hand, it was only natural that he would be able to see through the traps. However, if the difference in cultivation realm was too great, it would be difficult for him to see through them. In the past, Lu Yin's understanding of Eternal Darkness had only been superficial. Only now did he realize that the Dark Hall was Eternal Darkness' true method of killing enemies. Not long after he left, Great Elder Shangu remained in the starry sky, looking at the Heavenly King card. He wanted to wait for a reaction and find the ancient card. In the first zone of calamity, along with the shocking thunder, the sky above and the ground below were swept by lightning, and countless cracks appeared in the void. A figure walked out holding a long sword and retreated step by step. Following the figure was a creature that looked like an earthworm or a snake. It was golden in color and had black lightning patterns around it. Its eyes flashed with blue lightning as it opened its mouth to bite the figure. In the Land of Calamity region, the ancestor of the past raised his head. As expected, they had come. They knew that White Cloud City wouldn't let the matter rest when they attacked the 5 spirit tribes and the March Alliance. Even White Cloud City wouldn't be able to sit still. But so what? The first zone of calamity wasn't a place where they could do as they pleased. It was time for some old bastards to make a move. Did they really think that they could hide forever? Zhang Feng, this is the second time you've lured the primordial thunder locust to the Eternals. Don't even think about returning this time. Black Wuxian flew up, and black lines appeared in front of the primordial thunder locust, cooperating with the locust to imprison the figure. The figure was Lightning Master Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng's expression was cold. I didn't plan on leaving alive the first time, but you've allowed me to escape again and again. Black Wuxian, where do you get your confidence from? With that he severed the black lines. Countless black lines appeared in the sky, densely packed together. At the entrance of the first zone of calamity, a golden light descended, and Celestial Champion appeared with a grin. I'm here again, Arrow God. I don't want to hit women, but you seem to be asking for a beating. The only response he received was an arrow and a cold gaze. The Arrow God stared at Celestial Champion. Only Celestial Champion could keep her busy, but she was also the only one who could keep Celestial Champion busy. This person was too difficult to kill, and it could even be said that he couldn't be killed. Enemies like this were the most troublesome. Void Master and Wood God entered at the same time, but they were helpless. They hadn't recovered from their injuries from the previous battles, but they had to participate in this battle. The first time Great Elder Dan Gu had entered the zone of calamity, he'd immediately brought Di Qiong into the Heavenly Emperor card. Di Qiong hadn't even been able to react. Lu Yin's usage of the card was far inferior to Great Elder Dan Gu's. If it had been Lu Yin, he wouldn't have been able to bring Di Qiong into the card. Another great battle broke out in the first zone of calamity. This time the Sixth Direction Association had joined forces with White Cloud City, and the Eternals hadn't expected this. They knew that the humans wouldn't give up and that there would be a great battle, but they hadn't expected it to happen so quickly and so decisively. Kong Tianzhao had gone to find the ancestor of the past, but he'd been forced to retreat. The Qing Luo sword art represented the unfathomable power of spiritual force. When Lu Tian stepped forward, the Lu family used the primogenitor's scripture to make up for the lack of spiritual force. Although it still couldn't close the gap between them and the Qing Luo sword art, it was enough to fight. The Shaoyin divinity watched the human powerhouses kill their way into the zone of calamity. When had the Eternals become passive? In the beginning, the first zone of calamity had been enough to suppress the entire Sixth Direction Society, but as the Sixth Direction Society continued to surround and kill, their morale skyrocketed. Now all 6 calamity zones had been activated, and even the Divine Commandment was unable to suppress the humans. When the humans were truly united, they could unleash a terrifying power. The Shaoyin divinity regretted revealing himself so early. However, it wasn't that he wanted to reveal himself, but rather that he had no choice. It was that little bastard Lu Yin who had forced him to reveal himself. Right, where was Lu Yin? The Shaoyin divinity scanned the battlefield. Impossible. Who else in the entire Sixth Direction Society could affect this battle besides Lu Yin? Although the Shaoyin divinity didn't want to admit it, Lu Yin was indeed the only person in the Sixth Direction Society who could affect all of the parallel spacetime continuums. Suddenly, danger descended upon the Shaoyin divinity as a cold blade of light appeared in front of him. He raised his hand and summoned his sequence laws. The 2 sequence laws of extreme yin and extreme yang fused together to form a beam of light that swept forward and collided with the blade of light. The one who had attacked was Woodcutter. He took a step forward and raised his blade to slash at the Shaoyin divinity. The Shaoyin divinity knew that his opponent was Woodcutter. In front of him, Woodcutter attacked with his blade. The Shaoyin divinity was confident that he could fight against Woodcutter. Back when he had still been one of the 3 divinities, Woodcutter's strength had only been on par with his. Now, however, Woodcutter had fused 2 sequence laws and was comparable to the 7 sky gods. Woodcutter was no match for the Shaoyin divinity. However, the Shaoyin divinity did not notice that Woodcutter was right in front of him. On his right and left there were 2 people staring at him. They were Qing Ping and Wuxia. The Shaoyin divinity would never have guessed that Lu Yin's 3 senior brothers were all targeting him. This was something that Lu Yin had instructed them to do, as the Shaoyin divinity was extremely important to this battle. The blade of light slashed down with a frightening sharpness. The Shaoyin divinity raised his hand, and a beam of light shot out like a sword from his fingertips. It swept past and sliced apart the blade of light. Woodcutter, I underestimated you back then. But now it's you who has underestimated me. Woodcutter's gaze was cold as he slashed out with his blade. The spaceless blade sliced through the void, bringing danger to the Xiaoyin divinity. The Xiaoyin divinity raised his brows as he used his sequence laws to forcefully break through the void. This was a battle of sequence laws, and the Xiaoyin divinity knew that Woodcutter was no match for him in this aspect. Suddenly, an evil Saraira appeared from the side and charged towards him. Wuxia had not reached the level of a sequence law, so logically speaking he should not have been able to threaten the Xiaoyin divinity. This was especially so in the zone of disaster where everyone was weakened. His attack should have been completely ignored by the Xiaoyin divinity. However, Wuxia's goal was not to fight the Xiaoyin divinity, but to bring an evil Saraira closer to the Xiaoyin divinity. The evil Saraira was a coordinate that could be traced back to the past. The Xiaoyin divinity used his sequence laws to break through the blade, one finger pointing towards Woodcutter and the other towards Wuxia. At the same time, the evil Saraira was already close to him, but it was shattered by the beam of light that he had pointed at Wuxia. The remaining power swept towards Wuxia. At that moment, Woodcutter slashed out with his blade. It was still the spaceless blade, and this blade headed towards the beam of light that the Xiaoyin divinity had shot out. The beam of light suddenly disappeared, and the blade descended in front of the Xiaoyin divinity. The Xiaoyin divinity hastily dodged, but a layer of flesh was still torn off from his shoulder and blood dripped from it. He stared at his finger in confusion. What was going on? He had clearly used his sequence laws just now and could have suppressed Woodcutter's blade, but the sequence laws had disappeared. No, he felt it carefully. The sequence particles had not decreased, as if that attack had not been launched. Looking at Woodcutter, Woodcutter slashed out again, and at the same time, Wuxia pushed the evil Saraira away. Just now, Wuxia had used the evil Saraira as a coordinate and used tracing back to the past, directly negating what had happened when the evil Saraira was close to the Xiaoyin divinity. There was only one incident, and that was when the Xiaoyin divinity raised two fingers, one pointing towards Woodcutter and the other pointing towards Wuxia. This incident was negated, which meant that the Xiaoyin divinity had not made a move, but from what he knew he had already made a move. In other words, what he thought did not happen, and Woodcutter's blade slashed towards him without any obstruction. If not for his quick reaction, that blade would not have just torn open his flesh. The Xiaoyin divinity saw Woodcutter slashing towards him again, and this time he was on guard. He pointed his finger, and the beam of light shot towards Woodcutter's blade, directly ignoring Wuxia. After all, Wuxia's evil Saraira was not enough to cause him any harm. However, this attack disappeared once again. The Xiaoyin divinity suddenly looked at Wuxia, his gaze cold. "It's you." The second tracing back to the past was caught by the Xiaoyin divinity. After dodging Woodcutter's blade, he did not hesitate to attack Wuxia, especially avoiding the evil Saraira's approach. He pointed his finger, and since Wuxia had not reached the level of sequence laws, the beam of light should have been able to kill him directly. However, the beam of light suddenly disappeared again and tracing back to the past was used again. This time Woodcutter's blade was used as a coordinate. The Xiaoyin divinity dodged Woodcutter's blade, but the blade brushed past him, and Woodcutter also locked onto his coordinates. Otherwise, the moment the blade brushed past him, it would have caused Xiaoyin divinity's attack to disappear. Chapter 3153. A relic smashed into the Xiaoyin divine sovereign. The relic's power could not do anything to the Xiaoyin divine sovereign, but Wuxia did not just have relic. His true attack was the relic kingdom. All this time Wuxia had placed the largest relic in the mother tree to use tracing back to time to find traces of Yibo. His goal was to cultivate tracing back to time. Now that Yibo had been found, Wuxia could naturally use all of the relic, which was the true ancestral world's relic kingdom. The relic suddenly split apart, with one in the middle and 8 revolving around each other, forming a kingdom that slammed into the Xiaoyin divine sovereign's body. This attack caused the Xiaoyin divine sovereign to take a step back, its power exceeding his expectations. This was a power that was only second to sequence laws. Wuxia's blade descended once more. The Xiaoyin divine sovereign waved his hand to repel the relic kingdom and remained vigilant against Wuxia and Wuxia, not allowing any attacks to get close. He had a headache as he did not understand how these two were able to negate his attacks. What battle technique was this? The entire first calamity zone was bustling with activity, and the Xiaoyin divine sovereign had no time to care about anyone else. He only wanted to focus on tracing back to time, but he could not even find the right direction, so he could not understand this time battle technique. Helpless, he could only retreat. It was not that he could not defeat Mu Hong and Wuxia. Even if they joined forces, they would not be able to defeat him. However, these two were too strange. Moreover, they had been staring at him since the beginning, which made him feel that something was not right. The Shaoyin divinity retreated in one direction, and the wooden carving blade became even sharper. Wuxia's Dark Relic Kingdom was also blocking in that direction. The Dark Relic Kingdom was unable to cause much damage to the Shaoyin divinity, but the evil aura was at its peak and it was rather stable. The Shaoyin divinity was unable to forcefully break it open with the sequence laws, and it was very difficult for him to disperse it in an instant. He could only change directions, but Wuxia still refused to budge. The Shaoyin divine sovereign could only retreat step by step towards the Black Mother Tree. This was Wuxia and Wuxia's goal, as well as the reason why Lu Yin had asked them to attack the Shaoyin divine sovereign. They wanted to force the Shaoyin divine sovereign to the Black Mother Tree. The Shaoyin divine sovereign felt that there was something wrong with Wuxia and Wuxia. When he retreated, their attacks were gentler, but once he changed directions, their attacks became fiercer. There was definitely something wrong. There was something wrong. He did not want to follow their instructions, so he had to change directions. The wooden carving slashed out once again, pressing down on the evil Shelly kingdom. This time Reverend God Shao Yin was determined to change the direction. He used the Yin God All and attacked the evil Shelly kingdom. At the same time he avoided the wooden carving's blade. He could tell that as long as his attack didn't get close, the two of them wouldn't be able to deny his attack. The wooden carvings had their own methods, and Divine Venerable Shao Yin was no fool. He had already figured out the pattern. As the light beam swept across, the wooden carving could only dodge. Upon seeing this, Qing Ping, who had been staring at the scene, appeared. He also knew how to trace back to the past. The three of them all knew how to search for the past and were able to succeed. The only difference was the amount of time they had to search for the past and the degree to which they could negate the events. Mu Feng could easily negate Divine Sovereign Shaoyin's actions because he was also a sequence law adept. Wuxia, on the other hand, had a harder time. As for Qing Ping, it was very difficult. Therefore he did not intend to use ancient tracing and directly use judgment. The balance scale descended. One side appeared beneath Qing Ping's feet, while the other side appeared beneath deity Shaoyin's feet. This was a trial of laws. The path that Qing Ping had walked was a path that was unique to him. Back then he had relied on this to judge Di Qiong. Facing Divine Sovereign Shaoyin would naturally be a piece of cake. Divine Sovereign Shaoyin pointed a finger, wanting to break through Qing Ping's ancestral world. However, he could not do so. Qing Ping's ancestral world was not a battle technique, nor was it a physical attack. Instead, it was a trial of laws. Although it was not a sequence law, it had taken a shortcut. Judgment. Close or far? I choose close. Back when he had fought Di Qiong in the Eternal Kingdom, in order to save Lu Yin, Qing Ping had chosen close or far. The closer he was to Di Qiong, the more advantageous it would be for Di Qiong. This time it was the other way around. Qing Ping had chosen close, which meant that the closer he was to Divine Sovereign Shaoyin, the more disadvantageous it would be for Qing Ping. This was a fair trial provided that no outsiders interfered. It all depended on the methods of the two in this trial. Now that Mu Feng and the others had interfered, things were different. Divine Sovereign Shaoyin was still relatively close to Qing Ping, and he could clearly feel himself being pulled up into the sky by the scale. An indescribable sense of panic approached him, as if some mysterious force was weakening him. What the hell was this? The closer Qing Ping got to him, the more he could feel the chill. Without Mu Feng and the others, even if Qing Ping and Divine Sovereign Shaoyin were very close, the trial would not have been able to do anything to Divine Sovereign Shaoyin. At most, he would have been severely injured. After all, Qing Ping was not invincible, and this sort of trial was not invincible. The backlash he would have to endure would be even more severe. However, Divine Sovereign Shaoyin did not know that Qing Ping would suffer such a strong backlash. Furthermore, he did not dare to take the risk of getting injured on this battlefield. Seeing Qing Ping approach, he could only keep his distance and retreat. The more he retreated, the lower the scale fell and the less chill he felt. He heaved a sigh of relief and looked up. Qing Ping had caught up. Divine Sovereign Shaoyin raised a finger and shot a beam of light at Qing Ping, but it was dispelled by Mu Feng's blade. On the other side, the evil Shelly Kingdom was approaching. Divine Sovereign Shaoyin was dumbfounded. It was obvious that the three of them were working together. What were they trying to do? Mu Feng's blade, ancient tracing, Qing Ping's trial, and the endless evil aura of the evil Shali kingdom. The three of them worked together to suppress divine sovereign Xiaoyin until he could not breathe. The three of them had all sorts of techniques that were enough to counter all his attacks. Helpless, divine sovereign Xiaoyin could only retreat as far away from Qing Ping as possible. As he retreated, Qing Ping chased. In the blink of an eye, their battlefield was getting further and further away from Ancestor Shi's battlefield, and closer to the Black Mother Tree. This scene was seen by Mu Ji. He found it strange, but he did not dare to interfere, nor did he want to. Compared to the entire battle of the first domain of disaster, divine sovereign Xiaoyin's battle was just a corner, and was not considered glorious. The battle between Arrow God and Heavenly Lord Victor, Lu Tianyi against Ancestor Shi, Kong Tianzhao against Ji Luo, and Void Master and Mu Shen against the Ancient God. All of these battles were more glorious than theirs. Especially above their heads, the primordial thunder locust's lightning covered the entire first domain of disaster. Lightning Lord Jiangfeng was constantly fighting with the primordial thunder locust. Black lines filled the sky, bringing about an apocalyptic scene to the first domain of disaster. As a result, no one dared to fly up into the sky. The first domain of disaster was shattered. Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin was forced to continuously approach the Black Mother Tree. He was certain that there was a problem, but Qing Ping's judgment prevented him from moving in any other direction. Approaching Qing Ping was dangerous, but staying away from Qing Ping was also problematic. Helpless, Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin used 8-star Jadeite. 8-star Jadeite was equivalent to spatial memory, and it allowed him to integrate attacks that appeared within a certain range into his body and use them. Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin did not know what attacks had appeared around him, but he knew that the humans had been frantically attacking the domain of disaster and had attacked the Black Mother Tree multiple times. It was impossible for there not to be any powerful attacks here. Blue stripes appeared on his body, and as the blue stripes on his back extinguished, a blue gem formed in the surrounding space. Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin held it in his hand and swallowed it. Wuxia and Qing Ping exclaimed, 8-star Jadeite? Mu Ji's gaze sank. He had heard of 8-star Jadeite before, but how did this person know it? If Big Sis or Elder Chan were here, it would not have been surprising. They had surrounded Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin in the Rotting God dimension and knew that he had 8-star Jadeite's innate gift. This innate gift did not have much power, but it depended on whether or not a powerful attack had appeared in the surrounding space. Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin swallowed the sapphire, and an invisible ripple appeared. He raised his hand and shot an arrow at Qing Ping. This was the Arrow God's archery technique. During the battle of the first domain of disaster, the Arrow God had supported the first domain of disaster, and it had been in this area that he had shot his first arrow. Lu Yin had almost been hit, and that arrow had heavily injured Lei Tian and First Jian. Mu Xia's blade slashed down and the Arrow God was cut in half. Although the Arrow God's arrow was powerful, it could not suppress Mu Xia with just one arrow. Her archery was more about continuous shooting, and eventually she could suppress the battlefield. In this area, the Arrow God had only shot one arrow. Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin had only been able to shoot one arrow, but that was just the beginning. Soon after, terrifying lightning appeared on his body, lighting up every corner of the first domain of disaster and attracting everyone's attention. Even Jiang Feng, who was in the sky, looked over. Wasn't that his lightning? Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin's lips curled up into a sinister smile. Yes, this was the feeling. This was the might of the Thunder Lord's lightning, and he had not expected it to draw out the Thunder Lord's attack. He looked at Wuxia and the others. Die. He then raised his hand and lightning exploded, causing the void to crack. In the sky, Jiang Feng's expression changed. Not good, and he was about to attack. Above him, the primordial thunder locust lowered its eyes and let out a furious roar. Its eyes shot out blue lightning that pierced through the void and smashed towards Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin. Just as Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin was about to attack Wuxia and the others, he suddenly felt his scalp go numb. He looked up and gaped as he saw the primordial thunder locust's blue lightning descend. Without hesitation, he blasted the surrounding lightning away, colliding with the blue lightning. The world rumbled as the golden and blue lightning clashed, creating the most dazzling light in the first domain of disaster. No one had expected Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin to clash with the primordial thunder locust. Even Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin himself had not expected this, let alone the others. He was stunned. He could have used the Thunderlord's power to wipe out those three fellows, so why had he been targeted by the primordial thunder locust? He had even attacked himself. The blue lightning pressed down crazily, and the golden lightning around Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin was constantly weakening. He had only used the Thunderlord's might, and in this position the Thunderlord had not used his full strength. The primordial thunder locust was serious. Under this attack, Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin could not withstand it at all. The blue lightning spread through the void, burning and tearing his skin. His body was constantly bombarded by the blue lightning, and the golden lightning quickly disappeared. Divine Sovereign Xiaoyin hurriedly used the Tai Yin and Tai Yang sequence rules, using all his sequence particles to resist. As the blue lightning struck the ground, the impact of the lightning finally ended. Wuxia and the others watched this dramatic scene and were confused. What had happened? Chapter 3154. In the sky, Jiang Feng laughed. This fellow had no idea how much the primordial thunder locust hated his lightning. It wasn't targeting him or White Cloud City, but the lightning itself. The Xiaoyin divinity used the golden lightning to attack, so of course he was targeted by the primordial thunder locust. In the distance, Ancestor, she was helpless. The Xiaoyin divinity was unlucky to have borrowed Jiang Feng's strength. Didn't he see that Jiang Feng was being targeted by the primordial thunder locust? Using his strength to fight was courting death. The Xiaoyin divinity was crippled. He lay on the ground, not a single part of his body intact. He had been struck unconscious by the lightning, unable to move, and was charred. Mu Feng and the others looked at each other. What should they do? This wasn't part of the plan. Originally, they had wanted to force the Xiaoyin divinity to the Black Mother Tree, which seemed normal. However, the Xiaoyin divinity was half crippled and couldn't escape. How could they force him to the Black Mother Tree? If they didn't attack, it would be too conspicuous. If they attacked, the Xiaoyin divinity wouldn't survive. The three were stunned. They had never encountered such a situation. At that moment, a figure rushed out from the divine power lake towards the Xiaoyin divinity. Mu Feng was about to attack when Qing Ping stopped him. The three watched as the figure grabbed the Xiaoyin divinity and rushed towards the Black Mother Tree. Qing Ping stared at the figure. Was that Wu Ho? Hu. He stared at Hui Wu, whose body was covered in a layer of dim red. It was divine power. He had been sunk into the divine power lake. This was Ancestor Shi's decision. What was going on now? He was actually bringing the Xiaoyin divinity towards the Black Mother Tree. What was he doing? Chase. Woodcarving roared and slashed out with his blade. It swept past Hui Wu and slashed towards the ground. This was perfect. No matter why Hui Wu had brought the young Yin divinity towards the Black Mother Tree, it seemed that they could still achieve their goal. Qing Ping watched this scene with a complicated expression. Hui Wu had been discovered. Why didn't he go back with Lu Yin? He clearly had a chance, so what was he doing now? Was he helping them or the Xiaoyin divinity? At this moment, even Qing Ping couldn't understand. At the same time, the primordial thunder locust stared down. That was it. It stared at Jiang Feng again and swung its tail. Jiang Feng saw the Xiaoyin divinity being brought to the Black Mother Tree by Hui Wu. It was time. At the same time, he walked towards the Black Mother Tree. Eternal, I'm here again. Didn't you want the thing in my hands? Come and take it. Behind him, the ancient thunder locust roared and chased after Jiang Feng towards the Black Mother Tree. He Wuxian raised his eyebrows. Jiang Feng, your opponent is me. A figure walked out of the Black Mother Tree. It was the only true god. The one true god didn't even look at the battlefield where divine venerable Xiao Yin and the others were fighting. He just stared at the golden lightning. Jiang Feng, you still can't see clearly. There are some things that I thought you would understand. What do you know? Do you understand that you want to destroy the human race? Jiang Feng laughed. During Earth's apocalypse, under the pressure of despair from those powerful creatures, I still managed to lead humanity out. In this starry sky, I encountered numerous near-death battles, but didn't I make it through? How long has that beast been chasing me? Back then I stole the thunder right under its nose. Ah. What do you want me to understand? The one true God said calmly. What do you mean? To think is to reject heaven's grace. Nonsense. Jiang Feng stepped onto the Black Mother Tree. Behind him was the ancient thunder locust, and in front of him stood the one true God. He slashed out with an indescribable feeling. It was as if heaven and earth had turned upside down, and everything was within his sword. At this moment, everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Humans, animals, even the earth, the lake and the starry sky, all breathed a sigh of relief. It was as if everything was breathing, as if the universe was breathing. The one true God raised his hand and the starry sky froze. With a bang, his fingertips hit the blade of the sword. Then he clamped the blade with 2 fingers, allowing the thunder to pour in. He remained motionless. "I'll take this turbid treasure." "Can you take it?" Jiang Feng held the sword tightly and turned around. Behind him, the ancient thunder locust had just arrived, and the blue lightning smashed towards Jiang Feng. Jiang Feng raised his hand and allowed the blue lightning to enter his body. This lightning came from the same source as his, but after being nourished by the ancient thunder locust for countless years, his body couldn't withstand it. But if he couldn't withstand it, the one true God wouldn't have it easy either. The blue lightning smashed onto Jiang Feng's body, causing him to cough up blood. At the same time, the lightning entered the one true God's body through the blade. The golden and blue lightning smashed towards the one true God at the same time. Even the one true God could only let go of his fingers, allowing the blade to leave his body. Jiang Feng coughed up blood and laughed. He took the opportunity to slash with his sword. Under the golden and blue lightning, the blade pierced into the one true God's hand. The one true God's blood dripped down, melting the black mother tree. The one true God bent the blade with the back of his hand, allowing the blade to pierce through, but it couldn't pierce through. Jiang Feng felt the terrifying power, and his body was also being attacked by the blue lightning. He had no choice but to retreat. Cheng's life. The blade vibrated, causing Jiang Feng's power to vibrate. He couldn't help but cough up blood again. This time it came from the one true God. The one true God stepped out. "Jiang Feng, you're too arrogant. Without the turbid treasure you can't even get close to me. Stay." As he spoke, he grabbed towards Jiang Feng. Jiang Feng smiled at the one true God. "Don't you know how long you've lived?" In front of him, a tail filled with blue lightning smashed towards him. Jiang Feng didn't dodge, allowing the ancient thunder locust's tail to hit him. Although this attack made him feel uncomfortable, it allowed him to distance himself from the one true God. At this moment, Huiwu dragged divine sovereign Xiaoyin to the black mother tree. In the distance, the Grand Empyrean walked out from the void. 6 paths of reincarnation realm. Under the black mother tree, divine sovereign Xiaoyin had already regained consciousness. He originally thought that he would die, but he didn't expect Huiwu to drag him away and even avoid the pursuit of wood carving and the others. Just as he was about to thank Huiwu, he suddenly looked around. No, he was under the black mother tree. He looked into the distance and saw wood carving and the others looking at him. Seeing the expression in their eyes, divine sovereign Xiaoyin's heart sank. "Quickly take me away from here." Huiwu stood beside him and quietly looked into the sky. Divine sovereign Xiaoyin endured the pain and wanted to get up. At this moment he heard the words, 6 paths of reincarnation realm. This was the voice of the Grand Empyrean. Divine sovereign Xiaoyin's body slowly flew up, and at that moment, a thought flashed through his mind. He understood that he had been wrong, very wrong. He had thought that he had hidden himself well and was the best spy that the Eternals had placed in the 6 Paths Society. However, he had been wrong. The Grand Empyrean had clearly known that he was a spy and had set up a trap for him. No wonder he had been able to escape from the Tea Party battle. No wonder the Grand Empyrean had never stopped him despite all the things he had done. No wonder Lu Yin had spared his life in the rotting god space. No wonder, so this was the reason. Divine sovereign Xiaoyin couldn't control his body and flew into the air. His vision was blurry and he could only see a pair of eyes clearly. Those eyes belonged to the Grand Empyrean, and they held a lofty gaze that looked down on everything. So this was the case. He had always been an ant. Bang! Divine sovereign Xiaoyin's body exploded, and rays of light connected the void. In the blink of an eye, 6 pillars of light were formed with the black mother tree at the center. They connected the sky and the earth, and it was impossible to see the top or the bottom. They connected directly and covered the entire black mother tree, forming a giant circular pillar of light. It wasn't just the black mother tree, but also the one true God and the primordial thunder locust. In the first zone of disaster, the ancestor of the past's expression changed. Not good. She slashed at the black mother tree in an attempt to break the pillar of light, but it didn't budge. He Wuxian also attacked. The archer god, and the others all attacked, but they were also unable to move the pillar of light. Inside the black mother tree, the one true god raised his hand and pressed it against the pillar of light. With a boom, the pillar of light trembled and then cracked. In the sky, Jiang Feng's expression changed. It was useless. On the wooden carving, Lu Tianyi and the others stopped fighting and looked at the black mother tree. If it was useless, then this battle would have been in vain. Although most people didn't know the reason for this battle, it seemed that the goal was to seal the one true god inside. If the one true god could easily break through, then it would be too laughable. At this moment, the Grand Empyrean appeared beside the pillar of light, 100 meters away from the one true god. Taihong, this was your plan? For this, you didn't hesitate to exile the Lu family and allow Xiaoyin to do whatever he wants, the one true god said calmly as if he wasn't the one trapped inside. The Grand Empyrean coldly said, some things require a price to achieve. But what's the point of this? The one true god was calm. The Grand Empyrean slowly descended and entered the pillar of light alone. He sat at the bottom of the pillar of light. My suffering is you. Only by killing you can I pass through this suffering, but it's impossible to kill you. This is the only way. Eternal, I'll gamble with you. Either I die in this 6 paths of reincarnation realm, or your power will gradually be stripped away by the 6 paths of reincarnation realm. Although it will take a long time, I can afford to wait. The one true god placed his hands behind his back. You're so sure that this thing can strip away my power? The Grand Empyrean didn't answer and closed his eyes. The one true god raised his hand again, but this time he couldn't shake the pillar of light and the crack from before was repaired. The Grand Empyrean had entered the pillar of light, so even the one true god couldn't break it. The one true god shouted, I didn't think that the arrogant woman from back then would have a day of forbearance. Taihong, I acknowledge you, but so what if you can trap me? Can you deal with the eternal race's 3 pillars and 6 pillars? This is a gift from the heavens. Can you accept it? The only true god shouted. At this moment, the ancient thunder locust that was trapped in the 6 paths of reincarnation realm with him slowly swam out. He wasn't imprisoned by the 6 paths of reincarnation realm at all. The one true god laughed. You're really only targeting me. Taihong, how long have you been preparing? The Grand Empyrean opened his eyes. Did you learn this nonsense from Taichu? Too much nonsense. In the sky, Jiang Feng was helpless. He thought that he had trapped the ancient thunder locust, but it seemed like he was happy for nothing.